Meeting. My name is Klaus Ryman Phillip. I am filling in for our chair and co-chair today. As a reminder, please limit individual conversations during the meeting. This ensures commission members and applicants can hear one another. Please remain quiet until you are called upon. When you speak at the podium, please state your name and address for the record. Also, in the interest of conducting an efficient meeting today, I will ask if the applicant is present for each individual item. If you could please come forward and sign in and state your name and address, and I will then ask the committee if they have any specific questions for the applicant, and the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to any specific questions on that application. Before the commission votes on each item, I will ask any members of the public who wish to speak. Speakers are given 3 minutes to relay information to commission members. The agenda and documents for today's meeting are located on the PrimeGov website. If you're following along, select Agenda on the right side of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting to see the items discussed. Written comments received more than 24 hours before today's meeting are posted online and were shared with commission members. At this point, new materials may not be shared with the commission. So if you brought materials with you, please keep them at your seat. We cannot review them and incorporate them into this meeting. Desiree, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Fudge, Commissioner Jordan, Commissioner Corbin,
Present.
Commissioner Gaines,
Present.
Commissioner Meacham, Commissioner Milner,
Here.
Commissioner Poore,
Present.
Commissioner Ryman Phillip,
Present.
Commissioner Ramey. Chair, we have quorum.
All right, thank you. Procedures for today's meeting are noted in the agenda. For the sake of time, we ask anyone who is unfamiliar with the process, please refer to the procedures section. There are 2 items we like to mention specifically regarding the meeting process. These items involve certificate of appropriateness and appeals. Regarding certificates of appropriateness, after an application is approved and the 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Commission will mail the certificate of appropriateness to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the certificate of appropriateness is issued. Please contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to withdraw items that will not be completed. And regarding appeal to Board of Adjustments, any person aggrieved by decision granting or denying a certificate of appropriateness may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the Board of Adjustments. Katie, any news from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer?
I just wanted to note that our December workshop was canceled. We will get with you all to reschedule that for a date sometime in the new year. Just gets difficult between staff and commission members and quorum and all of that right around the holidays. And then we will be planning a commission committee training for all of our design review boards, commissions, and committees like we've done in years past. That'll be sometime early next spring, and we'll get with you guys as soon as we have a final date and time and location for that. If there's anything in particular that you would like to see talked about at that training, please let us know, and we'll try and include those things.
All right, thank you, Katie. Acceptance of the minutes. Have commissioners had a chance to review the minutes from the November meeting, and do we have any questions or a motion to accept?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, we have motion and a second. Please vote in PrimeGov. All right, that motion is approved. Katie, anything from code enforcement?
Nothing specific to report. As always, the code enforcement report is included in your packet, and feel free to reach out to staff or to the Action Center with questions about any individual cases that you see there.
Okay, any continuance announcements or requests?
We have one new request for HPCA 22-00130. They'd like to be continued to January 4th.
Okay, so Should we go ahead and make a motion on that right now, or?
Yes, we'll need a motion and a second and a vote on that continuance.
Okay, so would anyone like to make a motion to continue HPCA 22-00130?
So moved.
Okay, and just to clarify, that's to the January 4th
Yes.
hearing. Okay. And do we have a second?
Second.
Was that Commissioner Milner or Gaines? Okay, Gaines. It's moved by Commissioner Poore and seconded by Commissioner Gaines. All in favor? Okay, so item 2 on the cases for individual consideration has been continued to January 4th. Let's see, item 6, public hearings.
We have no dilapidated structures and no National Register nominations this month. We have 3 items on the consent docket, but for one of those items, a commission member is the applicant and will have to recuse. So we would lose quorum for that item because we're right at quorum right now. So staff would recommend pulling that item from the consent docket. We can hear that later in the meeting if we establish quorum, and going ahead and voting on items 2 and 3 of the consent docket.
Okay, so I will, can we have a motion? Do we need a motion to move item? Yep, okay. Do we have a motion to move HPCA 22-00162 to the end of the,
Do I recuse myself from that motion?
oh, that's,
I-
Oh, we just
yeah,
moved
I
that
don't-
one,
We
okay.
typically don't take a motion to pull something from the consent docket. You all can just make that
okay,
decision.
then I'll just note that we're moving item 1 on the consent docket to the end of the meeting in the hopes that we have a quorum at that point. Do we have any comments or a motion for items 2 and 3 on the consent docket? So do we have a motion? Not Cassie, I guess, or? I guess it, no, it could be. You can go 2 and 3, yeah, you can.
I'll say I'll make a motion on items 2 and 3 on the consent docket.
I'll second.
All right, we got a motion from Commissioner Poore, second by Commissioner Milner. I think we're still waiting. Oh,
It-
okay.
It shows, yep, the vote passed, and we'll correct that in the minutes to note that the motion was made by Commissioner Poore.
All right, so items 2 and 3 under consent docket have been approved. So if you were one of those 2 items, you are approved, and you don't have to stick around for the rest of the meeting unless you just want to. So on to item 6D, cases for individual consideration. And we had a couple items here that we were planning on moving to the end, items 4 and 5. Do I need to do anything more, or just note that in the?
No, that is at the applicant's request. We have several cases, all from one applicant, so they asked that we move them to be grouped together on the agenda. Just for general knowledge, we generally don't like to move things around on the agenda, but moving it to the end of the line is acceptable when that's requested.
All right, thank you, Katie. So that brings us to item 1 under cases for individual consideration, HPCA 22-00114.
This is located at 439 Northwest 14th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Andrew Thomas, Architect LLC, for David Ferris for certificate of appropriateness to 3, add new curb cut and parking area with retaining walls and gate elective. This is an application that the commission has seen twice previously, so this is their last remaining continuance. The commission will have to either approve or deny the project at this meeting. This is a proposal to install a new curb cut just north of the primary dwelling to access a proposed parking area in the backyard, and to modify the fence, gate, and install retaining walls related to the parking area. The most noticeable change since the last time this was proposed was reducing the width of the new curb cut and driveway. Staff did recommend approval with condition that the parking area itself be reduced in size to be the minimum amount of space required to accommodate 2 vehicles, and that revised documents showing those changes be submitted to staff. You do have have comments from Heritage Hills Neighborhood Association Preservation Review Committee at your seats as well.
All right, thank you, Katie. Is the applicant present? Okay, if you don't mind, well, we'll see if we have any questions for you, then if you do, you can come up and state your name and address. Do we have any comments from commissioners on this one?
And I will just note that that condition, that recommended condition, is not something that the applicant has yet said, yes, we'll do that. So we would need to confirm with the applicant what changes they'd be willing to make, if any.
I'd be curious of that answer.
Yeah, same here. So, yeah, maybe if the applicant could come up and state your name and address, please.
Meredith Ferris, 439 Northwest 14th Street. And I think is the change, Katie, the reducing it to 10 feet and then reducing the parking area to the 30 by 11? Is that the change that you're talking about?
I don't think I had anything that was specific as to the size of the parking area, but it was reducing the parking area to just
Down, yeah.
the-
I thought David sent you, it kind of looked like it was a modified version that I thought he emailed to you.
We have, let me see. I have something that looks like
Like that,
that's
yeah.
color.
So I
don't-
think that
didn't
has-
recall the parking area size being reduced in that document from
And
what was initially.
Yeah, I don't know that the parking area size was reduced, but the curb cut was reduced from 17 to 10 feet. And I don't know that the parking area, I mean, it's definitely the minimal size to accommodate 2 cars.
So staff's concern was it's proposed at 788 square feet. A typical 2-car garage that we see is 450 square feet.
Right.
And I know there's need to maneuver on the site, but it just seemed perhaps more than was necessary to be able to pull in and park.
So I guess the other option would, because yeah, I mean, if we're coming in at 10 feet and then you've got to make a swing to get into it and then be able to have another car do the same and then to get out. I mean, I guess most garages probably have a wider driveway, I'm assuming, to accommodate 2 cars just coming straight in, whereas this would just be wide enough.
Well, what we often see is a 10-foot driveway that at a certain point fans out to the width
Right.
of 2 garage doors.
Right.
Now, that would be assuming that you're backing out, which I think that's part of it, is a desire to not have to back out into the street, but to be able to maneuver and turn around and go out facing forward.
You could possibly do that with 1 car back there. With both cars, you would have to back out. Still, there wouldn't be enough room.
So I don't know if, that was kind of staff's concern, was the
Okay.
size of it. I don't know what the commission thinks about that at this
About
point,
that.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think to me that seems reasonable. If you're, I just kind of did the math here a little bit. For city standards, 18 foot is like a typical parking space depth, and then 24 feet is the maneuvering space behind. So that's pretty wide. That's like 42 feet, I think, or something. You'd need a pretty big paved area to really be able to like pull in, turn around, and then pull back out. So to me, I think that would be too much paving. I'm open, I think what staff is recommending with the reduction seems reasonable to me. And I was kind of thinking about how you could accomplish that. And I think Katie pretty much summarized it pretty well. I think it's almost like if you had a garage and maybe there's a drive and then you could park straight on and then maybe it flares out and you just have to back out. So
I think the issue is just like once you get back there, you've got to have enough depth for that second car to get her swing around with having a fence right there. I mean, it's just a really strange circumstance, I think, that we're in.
I'm wondering if there could be a compromise where the drive is just a little bit wider, so maybe it doesn't have to flare out quite as much, so maybe like a 12-foot drive or something, It's, you know, it's not a 17-foot, it's not a super wide drive where you could just park 2 cars off the street. But it would make it easier to kind of pull around the other car. And, you know, I think you'd have a pretty significant reduction in paving and still achieve,
Yeah.
you know, a
I mean,
pretty good
we've tried with
parking.
our, I mean, we would like as minimal as possible too, because we want to retain as much grass and yard for our kids as we can. So, I mean, I feel like between my husband and architect, they kind of pared it down as much as we thought possible for 2 car. I mean, one's a pickup and the other will likely be a small SUV. So it's not like they're, I mean, that's of course by our choice. They're not tiny little cars, but they tried to do it to what would accommodate that size of car there.
It looks like it's in this revised site plan, 30 feet and 11 inches wide. Is that correct, maybe?
That's what I have on here as well.
Yeah, I think,
And I know ours is just a really strange circumstance. Like I think we're literally the only home in the neighborhood. So we're just trying to find a solution.
I just want to make sure I understand this. I have the one that's got a lot of markups on it,
Yes.
but does this still, I'm only asking because there's parts of this where the curb cut is scratched off. Are you,
That's where he was taking it down from 17 to 10 feet.
okay, so the curb cut still exists?
There is still a curb cut, correct,
Okay,
that we're asking for.
okay.
yeah, I kind of want to make sure too, just personally, that I'm looking at the right site plan, but
Meredith, are you able to make it work with the staff recommendations? But-
I mean, I think what is here is what Dave and the architect, I know, I'm sorry Dave's not
Yeah.
here, but what he and the architect felt like would accommodate the 2 cars being able to pull in and get out without, and I don't even think this allows enough room for a car to truly turn around. So I think either way, you're maneuvering yourself back.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it feels really awkward because I feel like if you have that vehicle, the other vehicle in,
This is,
and you have both in, like you're going to have to remove that second one to get the first one out.
Right, yeah.
So,
But we knew, I mean, we knew
Yeah.
that the wider curb cut wasn't favorable, so we took it down to the 10 feet.
yeah, I agree. Because if you look at this parking configuration, you have the drive on one side and the parking on the other. So it's almost like you can pull in and turn in. But I don't know if there's enough, even with what you're showing, if there's enough room to kind of back out and come back out.
Second. And I know
or,
there were a
you know,
couple of
so-
more architectural renderings that I know Andrew Thomas submitted that I think showed, I mean, which Dave kind of showed, I guess, 2 options on this one that shows kind of how you could have 2 cars. Do you guys have access to this? Yes. Okay, so I mean, obviously you could pull in to have 2 cars there. Either way, you're backing out. Or you could pull in like that. That one would have to back out to get that one out.
Right.
So I mean, I just don't.
I think one issue here, well, so you're also on your last continuance, I think. So it's kind of, you know, if we, even with the approval with conditions, I think, I'm not sure how that works. If they're in the last continuance and they submit something to staff, you know, that we don't really have a site plan that we can say, you know, do this, because staff recommendations are, you know, to reduce it. So that'd be kind of at staff discretion to approve that or not. But if staff decided that didn't meet the guidelines or didn't meet their, can they come back even though they're out of continuances to address that? Or
So once it's approved, technically we could come back with changes to what was approved as a revision to the CA. It gets kind of messy when it's approved with conditions and they essentially say we can't meet the conditions, but we do have the ability to do that once it's been approved, to come back with and treat it as a revision if for some reason that didn't work out.
So I think our alternative is, if it's not approved today, is just because we can't park in front of our house on 14th, it's a 2-hour time limit, so then we would just be parking north-south on Walker, which I know probably isn't ideal for anybody, but I mean, I think that's kind of our only other option because I know the garage proposal was not favorable, and we were looking to widen our current driveway, and that wasn't favorable either, so.
So I did want to note that the concern with the garage proposal that the commission never actually saw, I think we had it on and then ended up just doing a continuance and it wasn't discussed. It was significantly larger than what our guidelines would allow for a
Yeah.
garage. I think what currently exists is actually a carport with a garage door on the front. So from the street, it looks like a garage, but it's actually a carport, and it's not historic. We talked about that, replacing that with a typical kind of 2-car, 450 square foot garage that meets the guidelines is something staff would support. Staff
Right.
would probably put it on the consent docket.
But then we're still just at parking for 2 cars. Like our whole point of this is we're about to have 4 cars.
Yeah.
So we just need parking for 4 cars.
I'm
But
wa-
yeah, I mean, yeah, replacing the garage, it just doesn't accomplish anything
Yeah.
because we're just back to square one.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so on the site plan, it says garage that's coming off Walker, and then it says 2-story brick garage to the side of that, but I'm thinking that's actually like an apartment or,
That's a back house.
okay. And so that's why you have 4 cars, is because that's an accommodation as well.
So I think that was historically the garage
Okay.
or carriage house. It's a 2-story historic structure that is now no longer accommodates a vehicle. There's no way to access it for parking. And then at some point in time, the carport was built next to that. So,
Yeah, a lot of these changes were made, I think, before HP was in place. And so they did a lot of these things that
Yeah.
now we can't really undo, but.
It seems like to me that there's an avenue for approval. I think fundamentally, staff is saying, okay, we think this extra parking area is okay, but it's a little bit larger than it needs to be. Because it's the last continuance and we don't have like an actual site plan to review, I don't want to put anything on staff, but
And
Without
can I-
having anything
Can I ask,
concrete
what do you
to-
mean by a site plan to review?
or a revised site plan that might accommodate, the reduced paving, or maybe taking another look at how you could reduce the paving
Okay.
to accommodate, 2 cars and frankly, I'd be okay personally with like a little bit wider drive, maybe just like a 12-foot or something to make, if it flares out, or maybe even if it's, if it flares out in both directions, so you're not pulling over super far for each car, but
Yeah, I mean.
basically you
one-
could comfortably park 2 cars.
Right. I
and
see
get
what, one
out,
way
you
we
know,
can't flare out because the house is there. So, I mean, I really feel like we have unturned every possible stone on this. I don't know that we have anything to come back with, honestly. So I think this is kind of it for us, like whatever you guys decide today.
Where that curb cut's going, is that going to go in between? It doesn't show trees on the site plan. Does a tree have to come out, or is it going to go in between those trees?
No, it'll go between those 2 trees, and then that gate panel becomes a sliding gate there.
So that was gonna be my question. The location of the curb cut for the drive, is that the only option of where it can be located?
I mean, I think that would be ideal in the sense that I believe they're like, you guys prefer there to be a certain number of feet between curb cuts, as it is on most others that have there are a few in the neighborhood that have like little kind of mini circle drives. So that, it just seemed like the most natural spot to us as far as not having, there's brick columns. I don't know if you have pictures of the side, but there's brick columns, so that allows us not to have to take any of those down and just truly switch one of the gate panels into a sliding gate. So I mean, yes, I guess the curb cut could move closer to the current carport curb cut, but then that puts us, I think, under the desirable amount of feet between the 2 curb cuts. And we would probably, then you get to taking trees down. So yeah, that one tree would be coming down. Sorry, that one was not shown I didn't see that on the little sketch. If you guys are looking at the same picture I'm looking at,
The one
there
in
is
the
one
middle?
tree that would be coming down.
The one in the middle, or which one?
Not the one, are we looking at the same picture, do you think? Yes. Okay, so it'd be the far one to my right, maybe your right as well?
Yeah.
Not the thicker base with the curve, but the thinner one.
I asked that question because it seems like almost if you had the curb cut more towards the center, then you would have a little bit easier opportunity to flare to each side of the permeable paving for parking, as opposed to trying to have to.
Oh, I see what you're saying, like take down the thicker tree and move the curb cut further that way. But then I think, I think we were just trying to accommodate the space between the 2 curb cuts, which I think they preferred 40 feet, or I don't remember the exact number, but.
I think that's like a little less of a concern.
Oh, yeah,
to
I mean, that would
me
be a
than-
much
than
easier
trying to,
situation
like-
for us, for sure.
I wa- There was some discussion of adding some landscaping as well, maybe? to
Right, I mean, the
kind of-
whole look, it would be these permeable pavers. I don't know if you have, I mean, I know Dave submitted all this as well. So it would look like a patio, basically, that you could have tables and chairs and entertain on, but then during the years that we need it to be parking, it could accommodate cars as well.
You know, I was looking at your site plan and looking at the dimensions and trying to think of like, if we said, okay, reduce a little bit and just have two with like maybe a drive where you pull in straight, pull over. I'm not sure, right now it's 30 feet, 11. You know, you need a little bit of paving on either side to maneuver still realistically, especially if you're kind of backing out. I'm not sure that there'd be that big of a reduction in paving, come to think of it. You know, you might shave, 3-4 feet off one side or something, but I definitely am for keeping the trees. I think, or I wouldn't want to lose any trees by moving any curb cut or anything. Do you know, as far as, maybe staff can answer this, as far as lot coverage or anything like that? They're pretty close in line with what's allowed, or?
So total existing is 53%, new lot coverage would be 61%. And the one other thing I wanted to note that you don't really catch on the site plan is that there are some pretty significant retaining walls that would be introduced along the sides of the paved area. Not to like backtrack, but just we do have guidelines that talk about where retaining walls are and are not appropriate and trying not to alter the topography of the site. This involves some pretty extensive excavation to cut into the yard and then go up with a retaining wall where the paving is proposed. So that was just one more concern from staff.
I'm really familiar with this house, and it is a really unique circumstance because there is no parking. I mean, you can't really park on Walker, because Walker and 14th Street, that'd be dangerous to other cars. And where her house is and the laws of parking and a stop sign and her driveway, there's really not any space to park. And on the other side, it is 2-hour parking. So there's no other place for the applicant to park their cars.
I think that's a good point, because most other houses would have some
Street
on-street parking
parking,
available.
and she has no, they
Yeah.
have no street parking.
So Katie, you had recommended reducing the original curb cut from 17 to 10?
Yes. And that's simply because that's our kind of standard guideline for driveway widths, it's 10 feet.
Right, but reduce it to 10, and if they're,
We did that, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
but if the surface size was reduced, you wouldn't be able to get the cars around with a 10-foot cut, right?
No, I think we're okay with, I mean, I think according to the architect, we're okay with the 10-foot cut. I think that gets us in, and we can get the 2 cars one way or another
Okay.
in there.
So would this work with the staff recommendations for you?
Say it one more time, Amber, I'm sorry.
With the staff recommendations, would you be able to get your cars back there following?
I mean, I think this is kind of it, as far as the size of the space. If that's what the recommendation is, to reduce that size, I don't know that I think we have it as reduced as we can to accommodate the cars that we have. But we did take the curb cut down.
So it's 788 now, what did staff requested?
So, and sometimes we get, when people are looking at driveways and at widening paving, and especially configurations that are kind of unusual, or you're trying to maneuver around an existing feature, we get a more detailed diagram with dimensioned kind of drive lanes and maneuvering lanes and parking spaces to show what exactly and specifically what's needed to accommodate. I mean, I'm looking at the length of this from north to south at almost 31 feet and thinking a standard parking space is 9 or 10 feet wide. And I'm not a parking lot designer, but it's not clear to me why another 10 feet or so is needed beyond that width. If you pull forward into the area and then back out, just as if they were building a garage there, I understand there's a need to be able to maneuver the car that's on one side around the back of the other car. It just compared to what we typically see when people are installing a driveway, building a garage, it seemed like an excessively large amount of paving. Even if the edge were softened at the northwest corner, because if you were pulling straight in and backing straight out, you wouldn't need to maneuver it all the way down into that corner along west property line. Just seemed like, looking at it, there would be ways to cut back on how much of that paving is being added into the space.
I agree with that. When I first looked at it, I was like, man, that seems like a really large parking area for 2 cars. But the more I thought about it, there's also a bit of a chicken or the egg. Like if you had like an 18-foot wide drive or something, or 16, then you could just pull in, you could have 2
Right.
standard, and you'd have less paving on site, but you have a really big curb cut. And I'm almost, I like the idea of reducing the curb width generally. It's nicer if you're a pedestrian walking along, you don't have like a huge wide drive and cars. So I'm almost leaning towards, I recognize, I think given the drive width and site constraints, you know, I think the paving area is reasonable. If you think about having a little bit of extra room, you're gonna have to have some maneuvering room no matter what. I think Amber brought up a really good point with the unique circumstance. I think that makes a lot of sense. And you've talked about landscaping. I'm not sure, maybe this is something that we'd look at as a condition or something, or figure out how we could incorporate, you know, landscaping into that. I'm not sure if there's a clean way to do that, but I guess I'm kind of leaning towards, I think a unique circumstance might exist, and it's not an egregious amount of parking, and I think with the permeable pavers and things, it won't feel, you know,
With the reduced
offensive.
curb cut, you're also reducing the visual
Correct.
to
yeah.
the space in the backyard, so I would agree with you.
And it is permeable paving. It's not concrete, like poured, so it's not necessarily permanent as, you know, a poured concrete drive parking, you know, so.
Yeah. I guess
I
it
think
still
I
need
could get there.
the retaining walls, but I don't think that's necessarily that detrimental, and it'll help define, you know, backyard and parking maybe. You know, I don't have, that's not something I would get hung up on, especially with some landscaping, so.
So on this one, all we're voting for right now is on this one part, because the rest have already been done.
Correct. The other items were, the addition and that work was previously approved. Just to be clear, so one thing that we did have noted in the staff report, and I think this has been discussed before, but there is some question for HP guidelines support using permeable materials for parking. The municipal code does not always support that. And that would be something we would have to work through with the applicant and with plan review if they in fact are not able to use a permeable material for the parking area. And then just on the retaining walls, I just wanted to give you all, you know, we've had a lot of discussion on several cases lately about not dramatically altering the topography of the site, not regrading the site, not introducing retaining walls where they are not supporting a slope that does not already exist. I was looking to see if I had the retaining walls. So that was one of the other thoughts with reducing the paving, is that the retaining walls get taller, or I guess the slope gets taller as you move to the north, and that if that northern end of the paving area could be pulled in, you wouldn't need as much retaining wall, because they get to about 2 feet at the north end of the, so that's cutting in 2 feet into the slope of their, you know, entire backyard. And I certainly, staff understands it's a unique, a challenging condition with their current parking configuration, but these are some significant changes, and these are things we would not typically approve. Parking is always a challenge at many properties. We don't have a lot that have such a short driveway, but we do have numerous other properties that have a driveway that's not long enough to park a car in. And I just want the commission to be, you know, fully, I wish we had one more continuance to work through.
And I will say, as far
further,
as the excavation part goes, there's a large mound in the backyard, so that's the majority of what is coming down from that. Our pool sits, and then you step down 2 steps to kind of get to our backyard basically slopes down toward Walker as it is, and then there's a mound there. So I think that even we already stepped down 2 steps from the pool to get to the rest of the yard, and so it would just be kind of going into that, basically, if that helps. But yes, we would be taking out some dirt to level it out so that you're not parking on this mound.
Do we have any comments from the neighborhood or residents on this one? Can we ask that?
Yeah, there's,
There is one
Yep.
from,
We have a written one, but we could just go ahead and ask, is there anyone from the neighborhood here who would like to comment on this one? No comments from the neighborhood? Okay.
if for some reason we approve this with the permeable paving as is, and we can't get there with the city codes, what would happen?
So either they could come back with a revision to make some sort of change to address that, or depending on the scope of what needs to change, it could be a new application.
so we don't need to make a motion, really. We just need to make this motion. They'll work it out with the city. If they can't, they'll have to come back to us. Okay.
And for the motion, so we would eliminate the first condition because we're approving basically what they're showing. You would still need revised renderings or section drawings to confirm the retaining height wall, is that correct?
No, I think we have that
That'd
if
be
they're not
okay,
making
okay.
any changes.
So we could just remove the conditions.
Unless we have any, but I don't know if, I guess that's up to the committee if we want to have if we want to do the permeable paving, if that's a condition. And I don't know how we would add any kind of landscape provisions, or if that's just, something.
We
like-
don't
I
typically
know.
require landscape, we don't typically review landscaping at residential properties. So I don't
Then I
I
say,
don't know
yeah.
that you, and permeable paving is what is proposed, so there doesn't need to be a condition for that. It
And
would just be
I
if
believe
that,
that Andrew or David submitted that material as well.
yes, I think we
Yeah.
have that in here.
Okay, perfect.
Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Yep.
I move to approve HPCA 22114, item number 3. With, I don't know, with I can't say recommendation to the staff because y'all didn't recommend it.
Maybe with the unique
well,
circumstance
it could be
that-
with the findings and
Yeah.
with the unique circumstance and just not the conditions.
Okay. With the finding in unique circumstances listed.
All right, thank you. We got a motion by Commissioner Gaines. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We got a second from Commissioner Corbin, I think. All in favor, vote, or vote your conscience. I guess. All right, your item has passed.
Thank you all.
Okay, and we have continued item 2, so we are on to item 3, HPCA 22-00152.
This is located at 2124 Northwest 26th Street, Shepherd, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Ryan Bass for certificate of appropriateness to, 1, install wood trim within window openings to address airflow, spaces between frames and brick due to settling required. So this is work that is already underway. The house has had some settling, some shifting, and the applicant has identified some pretty significant gaps between the brickwork and the windows. They've been doing work to fill in those gaps with wood trim, wood molding, et cetera, that's not consistent with the condition of the windows, with the, you can see here the new wood, that they're just kind of adding in additional layers of trim around the windows. So staff has recommended continuance of this and that they revise the proposal to more properly address the repair work that needs to be done to the windows and to correctly install the appropriate trim brick mold at window openings.
All right, thank you, Katie. Do we have the applicant here?
Hello, my name is Ryan Bass, 2124 Northwest 26th Street. So yeah, as you can see here, I had some foundation work done that separated the existing window frame from the brick veneer. So what we did is we added additional wood trim around that to close that gap. And these windows and wood have now been painted the same color as the existing windows. So I can answer any questions you guys have on this.
All right, thank you. Anyone have any, yeah, go ahead.
Are these pictures right here, the after?
Yeah, so these are right after we put up the trim and the application was submitted, but now they've been painted the same color as the existing window. There were no changes to the original windows as is. We just added trim to close that gap in between the veneer and the windows.
What kind of gaps, like, how wide were those gaps on average, do you think?
So on the west side, it was minimal. There was only about a 1-inch lift there on the foundation. On the northeast corner, it was pretty big. I want to say 4 inches. So there had to be pretty big trim added there to close that gap. That was the main focus of the settling there. So we did no trim was removed or any changes to the existing window. We just added trim around to close the gap. So.
And these are kind of in progress photos, but it's since been
Yes,
painted
these
and
are.
finished.
These probably months ago. This work was done in July and August, I believe. So, but yes, everything now is painted and as it was. So.
Yeah, this is kind of a tough one for me because I appreciate people putting work into their house and trying to, doing foundation work is a big endeavor, and things are going to move, and as you noticed, and I'm assuming the windows probably are still maybe somewhat square. I don't know what shifted or where, that difference happened, but.
Yeah, it didn't seem like the windows shifted. It was mostly the brick veneer came out with the lift. So I think that was the main cause of that created the gap. In some areas it was minimal, other areas, significant, in a larger gap, then you can just, put caulking or something around it to close that. So, thought that would be the best option to, keep the existing windows and extend the life of them rather than doing all new replacements. Thought that would be the best way to keep them.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult because on one hand, we've got historic preservation guidelines that specify certain, there's certain jurisdiction over certain things and work items. And I feel like this is one of those kind of strange gray areas almost, because you're not replacing the window's staying there. You're not really removing anything or demolishing anything. You're adding something to kind of fix an issue and to make it, airtight and watertight, which is important in preserving the house. I'm not sure, in an ideal world, I don't know if you would remove those windows and rebuild a frame for it, or I'm not sure, what the ideal fix would be.
That's what I was going to ask Katie, because it
Yeah, I'd
says
be
revised
happy to.
proposal will properly address window condition, but I don't know how what would be the recommendation for that?
So, one thing is just with that amount of shifting, I think a more thorough evaluation at what impact that had on each window, on the size of the window openings. 1 inches to 4 inches is a huge change to a masonry opening, which just makes me concerned for the structural integrity of those openings. And it may be necessary to reframe those window openings. So the structural concern is one piece of it, of, okay, what has actually happened to these windows and these window openings to cause such huge gaps that need to be filled. The other concern is the design, the historic integrity from a visual architectural standpoint. If you look at, in the attachment, for example, page 5 of the application, There is a piece of trim. You have the original brick mold with a little bead detail going down the left side of the window. You have that same piece of brick mold with the bead detail on the right side of the window. And I'm sorry, this isn't up on the screen. This is in our packet. And then you have just pieces of wood filling in the gap on the other side. It's not symmetrical. It doesn't match the historic brick mold. Yes, it'll be painted. That'll be less noticeable. But that's not typically what we would ask someone to do if they were making repairs to a window opening. When they hadn't yet done the work, we would say the brick mold needs to fill the opening and the window needs to be placed symmetrically within the opening, and it needs to all match the original detail. So the visual architectural integrity of how these openings are being addressed, combined with structural issues that may be kind of masked by this work, were the concerns.
Yeah, just to make a point about the structural integrity, I did have a structural engineer do a report before all the foundation work was completed. He did recommend additional beams be installed under under the brick that is being shifted to account for any additional movement on the wood structure internally. So that has been addressed with the foundation work also.
So have you had to fill in brick? Because if you have that big of a gap, somewhere there's got to be a gap in the brick too.
Yeah, so the gap was between the existing frame and the brick, so no additional brick was added. It was just the wood to close that gap from the edge of the window to the existing facade of the brick.
I guess I don't understand how that's possible to not have a separation through the brick as well.
That's my concern, is that maybe the brick wall is like bowing out away from the wall or something.
Like, where'd that space come from if you didn't have to insert? I mean, if either the window shrinks or the brick moves somewhere,
Yes.
so where did the brick move to aside from 1 inch apart from the window?
It looks like it moved outward and up. So yeah, they said during the foundation work that the brick was moving too far out from the structure, so they lifted as much as possible. So they said they did the best they could to, get it as high as possible back to level, but without, compromising the integrity of the brick wall.
I just want to make sure I understand the timeline. Did you own the house? Or have you been the owner the duration you ordered the foundation repair
Correct, yes.
to be done? Okay.
Yeah, so it looks like there was some previous foundation work done before I bought the house.
Okay.
2018, they found some existing piers
Okay.
in the northeast
Okay.
corner that failed.
Okay.
So again, we had to go back in and address that.
Okay. So trying to solve one problem has,
Yeah, yes.
in an old home, has created another problem. We all know that.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
yes.
in there
yeah,
too.
we-
But how, I think maybe what we're just trying to find out, was there any documentation on each of these windows how much that gap was? Was it like half an inch to an inch all the way around on all of them? Was there any documentation done like that?
I might have some existing pictures.
Because I
previous to the
get it.
trim.
It's just like, if it's just like a half an inch or an inch, this is tough.
But
Because I
looking
get
at
it.
the pictures of what they filled in, it's
Yeah.
quite significant. And that's where I don't understand how there's not a gap also in the brick, the facade of the brick too. Like how you can't, like you said, Patrick
Right.
said, either the windows shrunk.
Well, that trim piece that's over that, how much overlap of the existing window frame does it do?
Which window? Because they're
Let me see
on
if I can share
the west front, there was minimal gap there due to less, it only came up an inch or so. But on the northeast corner, that was the main issue. With that lift, it created a larger gap.
So I've got this window up. I've pulled it up on the screen now, where you can
Yes.
see a pretty significant piece of new piece of wood down the side, and then at the top as well, where that trim board goes right under the eave of the roof, there's a new piece inserted, and it looks like the brick on the right side of the window is forward of that trim.
Correct, yeah, so existing, it looks like there was some previous, foundation work on that corner, that was the main issue. And it looks like there's new mortar in there, so they had previously repaired that. And on the top piece, existing, that piece was flared out to account for the shifting outward. So yeah, now with the new lift, it shifted, more outward. So that's why on the right side, there's additional trim there, but not on the left, because it looks like that piece of brick, it has fractured with the left side of the wall. So they repaired that to account for the shifting outward.
Yeah, no, it kind of makes sense to me. You have, with a veneer wall like this, you got your wood framed wall, and there's generally an airspace,
Yeah.
and then there's your brick, and normally the airspace is 1 or 2 inches, something like that. And when you lifted the foundation up where that brick was sitting, I'm assuming it kind of compressed it up and it kind of flared out away from the wall a little bit. So
Yes.
you have this gap, and to John's comment, it's a tough situation because on one hand you're trying to fix the foundation, but in doing so, the wall's pulling back a little bit, and short of like rebuilding that wall or something, or doing something pretty significant, I'm not sure how you address that. I don't know if pulling the window out and doing the frame, that you almost have to add some kind of trim around to cover that gap, but I don't know if that's a great long-term solution, or I don't know, it's a complicated situation because you fix one problem to like.
Katie, if they had that, if they would have fixed foundation and there was a gap in between that window, and there was a 1/2 inch gap, or a 1 inch gap, I mean, would they be in violation of anything? I mean, old houses shift, they move. You don't have to run it immediately, fix everything. So, I mean, could they,
Oh, if
if
they
they
just
would have had a
left
gap
it?
left there, would they have been fine? They're trying to fix it, but
Right.
they weren't in violation necessarily.
Well, I think at a certain point, if there's enough gaps and enough open air kinds of things, then you start coming up against property maintenance concerns that
Dilapidation.
it's, not sealed up, weather tight, which leads to, other issues with deterioration with the windows and the masonry, letting water get in. So, I mean, certainly we want repair work to be done. We want those gaps to be sealed up and things to be weather tight. I think it's just about ensuring that it's being done properly, that where new woodwork is being introduced, that it matches the existing and has the proper, profile and detail, and ensuring that, I guess that the conditions that are causing these problems are all being properly addressed, and we're not just kind of patching over something and masking what's going to be a more serious issue for his windows down the road.
I guess part of that's a little bit my struggle is where, where is there like that ordinary maintenance, and, they've done the foundation work and they're trying to seal the building up as best they can,
And has all this been done? Are there any windows that are in progress that haven't had work done on them that have issues?
No, this has all been completed.
It's all been done?
Correct.
And just one more time, when was this done? Over the summer, is that what you said?
Yeah, the foundation work was done in July, and then I would say all the window repair was done in August.
Okay.
And how many windows total were adjusted?
4, I believe. They were all along the north side where the foundation work was done.
You mentioned you had a structural engineer, I presume, before the foundation work, maybe to kind of see, okay, you need the
Correct.
foundation work.
Yes, he did a full report, and I gave that to the foundation company that has a lifetime warranty. So he recommended, yes, additional beams be sistered under all of these walls as well for any additional settling that could possibly happen.
So did you have like a post, foundation work assessment done? Because I feel like that's almost, that was a critical review beforehand, of course, but now it's like if the brick is pulling away and you're looking at, I feel like it might be good to have someone look at it and be like, yeah, this is at least stable, it's not going to continue pulling off the wall and eventually, detach.
I have some
from the wall
concerns about that
completely,
because
or-
is that relevant to this? The interior
Right.
structural is a concern down the road, but I don't think that's relevant to this right here because this is kind of getting into other things of the house that are irrelevant to this.
Yeah, this is why I'm wondering, is this like an ordinary maintenance? And, is this something, since they're not really touching the windows or adding things to the window and trying to make it, weather tight, but they're not replacing the window, they're not pulling the window out.
And I get concerned sometimes we force people to do, you're either not going to touch it, or we're telling them you have to take it all apart, rebuild it, put in a brand new window, and then that gets cost prohibitive.
I agree. So either people don't do the work,
Right.
and you have a hole there and it deteriorates, or
Or somebody tries to do something, which I think
Yeah.
when you paint it, I don't think you will notice unless you're standing in front of it. That's my thing.
I think it's a
is-
complicated situation, and I applaud the applicant for making the improvements. Since you're not, I don't know. Yeah, I struggle to.
I'm wondering if it would be helpful, the work is already completed, so this process isn't really holding you up on anything. If it would be helpful for the commission to perhaps get more information on the structural work was done and get a more thorough kind of each window straight on shot, dimensions of what was installed, dimensions of what the gap was that was filled. I understand the comments about ordinary maintenance and repair. I think if someone came to us and had not already done this work, we would say that installing new woodwork on the exterior of the home that doesn't replicate the existing woodwork is not ordinary maintenance and repair. It is a change. Is it a noticeable change once it's all painted? No, probably not. But it is a change from the existing condition. It creates a change in the proportion of the opening. So
What about if we did a continuance, allow us to go out to look at it, and then you could see if you could find pictures that showed previous to the work being done, so we could see what the difference is between the two. Because normally that's what we would look at as the existing condition and renderings of what it would look like. So if you could try to find pictures of what it did look like, we could have a comparison, give us a chance to go look at it, and then we could come back next time and look at it. I think the structural part's important because it's important to what happens to the structure later on. That's not as big of a concern to me because that's not what you're here for.
Yeah, I think
So-
I think what is relevant is that when you do the structural work, you don't know what the results are going to be. It's not like he knew that he was going to have these gaps and that he's going to have to fill them in. It's like he knows he needs to do structural work on the foundation. So you get the work done, and then whatever happens during that process happens. In this case, the wall separated a little bit, and then you just have to fix that however you can. So.
Would that be acceptable to you to do continuance until next month to allow those things?
Yeah, I can try to locate pictures of before and take new pictures of how it looks now, and submit those.
Okay.
When would he have to have information?
So
for-
we can continue either to February, or to January 4th or to February 1st. For that January 4th meeting, we would need everything else you're going to submit by this coming Tuesday. Or if you want to go to February, that gives you more time to try and pull pictures together and any other, related documents that would support.
Okay,
The
yeah,
work.
February works
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
What was that exact date?
It's February 1st.
Okay.
So I make a motion on HP CA.
Yeah, we need,
Oh,
do we have
sorry.
any comments from the public?
Sure.
Could you state your name and address?
Hello, Holly Hunt, 400 Northwest 23rd Street. I never do this. This is not my project. I've just listened to Ryan Bass's proposal, but it reminds me of a replacement window job that I went through this commission with. And I think at the end of the day, Mary Jo Meacham made a great point. We are approaching 100 years on a lot of these homes, 100 years plus, soon to be. So the reality is, as things deteriorate, they compress, right? As they compress and they lose mass, they shrink. I think that this gentleman has done everything he can to maintain the historic openings, the rough openings of the brick. To ask him to tear down a wall and replace, or in some way infill with brick, is absolutely against everything the guidelines state. This is regular maintenance work as swelling or compression happens. It's not trim. This is a brick mold. This is merely a piece of molding that hides a gap. It's a very typical and regular maintenance device. I'm just saying this as a trained professional. I have no bias for this project, but I want you all to understand as commissioners, like, this isn't a complex project. This is a reactionary project, like Commissioner Ryman Phillips pointed out. Nobody expects these kinds of gaps to occur, but he has done it in such a way that it is minimal. It maintains the historic opening, the rough opening of the brick. He has done everything he can to maintain and preserve the historic fabric, and we must do these kinds of maintenance if we want to preserve these projects. So
I agree, Ms. Hunt. I was actually getting ready to speak up on this. As a realtor, I sold a lot of houses in this neighborhood, and this is not something that didn't happen. This was 15 years ago, but as soon as you started doing any kind of foundation lift on these houses, the windows were not square to begin with, and then they definitely weren't square when you were done. So the maintenance here, I don't know if it would prove anything. Obviously, there is a hole if he was able to shim it with the wood to see the gaps in it. I think that this is maintenance that has to be done. That anything else would be cost prohibitive for this home, and I think it will look really nice from the street when he's done with it.
not only cost prohibitive, but I would suggest that it would ruin the historic fabric to do anything but a minimal interior brick mold on that covers the gap inside the existing brick opening. That's the key.
So I want to be
Is
clear, staff
maintained.
is in no way asking that they rebuild the wall or rebuild the opening or move brick or add brick. I'm looking at wood that's been filled into an opening that does not match the existing brick mold, that does not come all the way down to the windowsill. I'm looking at wood that comes across behind the brick where elsewhere on the property it's forward of the brick, which is going to create some water issues. I'm looking at work that has been done that staff is concerned has been not done properly and not done up to the architectural and the structural character of the building. I think that filling in gaps with new brick mold is probably the most appropriate and the most minimally impactful way to address this kind of thing. I think staff's just concerned, if you came in and asked to do it before the work had already been done, we would look at the design and the proportions and the dimensions and the details of the new wood that's being added to the old wood. Make sure that it's not just a 2x4 shoved in a hole. I'm not saying that's what he's done, but that's what we would look at, is we want this to be designed well. We want it to match. We want it to look like it belongs there in the opening, not just, we've just piecemeal patched together.
But I would also suggest, like, your purview as commissioners is for the preservation of the historic fabric, of course, with the staff, their recommendations, but he has gotten an engineer on board. They are doing the structural work. That's not really this commission's purview to understand what the structural indications are. It's more about the historic fabric, and I think, you know, filling in some gaps, maybe, yes, we can make recommendations to them about how that brick mold needs to look, but filling in gaps is not in any way detrimental to the historic fabric of this house.
I think for me, I don't know if I have all the full detail. I mean, even just looking at the front door, where that weird, there, in one picture, there's that weird jut out with like stone, and it's been like, and then another picture that's gone. I mean, what happened to that?
By the front door?
Yeah.
That has all been replaced, so this is with, you know, the existing porch was cracked. Water was getting in there, which we think contributed to the settling of the front part of the house. So that was replaced with one pour, new existing front porch, and then there was the same brick that came off that brick, you know, skirt. That was all chipped away and then reinstalled around as it was. The same railing was installed back, and then the same little rock wall by the front door has been reconstructed as it was. So we're trying to make everything look exactly how it was, after this movement has occurred.
And was that work approved?
Staff has administratively approved
Thank
all
you.
items except infill at the windows.
Okay,
Gotcha.
thank you.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, I think it's all good points. I think because the photos we have are kind of an in-process photo, I agree. I think continuance, we can see what the final result is, and we can come back and talk about it and see. But I agree. It's an unforeseen thing that happened, and I think you've done the best you can to correct that. And I think we'll see the final pictures, and then we can discuss.
Yeah, I appreciate Ms. Hunt's points, but I think it would just we try to push it for a vote, but I think it would make everybody more comfortable. It wouldn't necessarily halt what you're doing if we did that direction, so.
Okay. So yeah, just
So-
needing existing photos as is for the work.
Yeah,
That's all that's
if
required.
you can find ones of what it looked like before, so we would be able to have a comparison to see, was it this big of a gap or this big? Because one thing, to my question before was, we can't necessarily see what that gap was because I don't know what how much over the existing that coverage goes. So I don't know, you may have it covering 1/2 inch of the existing, or you may have it being 2 inches. I don't know that.
Okay.
So if we
And
could
just
see
photos
those
of what the
pictures.
completed project looks like, since these are all unpainted still and kind of in process, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then we would just know better, so if that works.
Right.
If there's something relevant to this work in what you got from the structural engineer, that would be help. Not that the structural repairs are necessarily the commission's purview, that's interior work, but if it informs, a better understanding of why this was necessary, you could
Yeah,
consider
so
submitting that.
I don't think that report covers anything about the window, any potential effects on the windows or anything. That was mostly just, the actual construction of the home. But yeah, there was, cracks on the inside too that we had to repair, so it was a large lift. And with this, we're just doing the best we can to get it, how it was without doing a total window replacement. After the cost of all this work, we thought this would be the best option, so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Is there anyone else from the public that wants to be heard on this? I think we're probably ready for a motion then. Okay, it's that kind of active still. So we've got a motion from Commissioner Gaines. Continue to February 1st. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, a second from Commissioner Milner. All in favor?
Go to live meeting. Yeah, there you go.
And if we're still waiting for, there we go. All right, you are continued to February, so we will see you then.
Okay, thank you.
All right, appreciate it. All right, we are skipping items 4 and 5. We moved those to the end, so we are on to item 6, HPCA 22-00166.
This is at 2324 Northwest 26th Street, Shepherd, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Jonathan Reinke, Living Spaces, for Anthony Carfang for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage elective, 2, deconstruct carport elective, 3, reconstruct garage elective, 4, reconstruct carport elective, 5, replace paving elective, and 6, install solar panels elective. Staff has recommended approval of the demolition of the garage and the carport, recommended approval of constructing the new garage and installing solar panels with the condition that those be located only on the garage, because staff did not recommend approval for reconstructing the carport. The carport is a non-historic feature that's not consistent with current HP guidelines. And while it exists now, once it's demolished, the ordinance states that you have to go back with new features that are consistent with the guidelines that meet the applicable criteria. So staff did not recommend approval for rebuilding the carport as proposed.
All right, seems like applicant is here. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
John Reike, here for Tony and Jenny Carfang, and I'm the proposed builder, designer, the guy you guys need to shout out. So,
All right, perfect. So, do we have any questions from the commission on this one? So it seems like staff, let me go to the staff recommendations, are recommending approval for basically all the items with the exception of anything related to the carport. If I'm,
Rebuilding the carport.
yeah, rebuilding the carport, yeah. Yeah, so do you have any, I don't know, any justifications or any comments on that? Or
well, not particularly, you know. So, I mean, I was shocked when I discovered it wasn't a 1932 carport. So, but sorry. No, and the thing that we really want to make sure that we have an opportunity to do is put something back there, because the clients in this particular case are very avid outdoor bike enthusiasts, and I imagine, actually, I think, Klaus, you know Tony, and he's very active in city councils, working on advocacy for walkable, communities, bicycling, all that stuff. And so they spend a lot of time underneath this structure working on maintaining their bicycles and their various outdoor activities. So having a structure there is going to be very important to them, but they are definitely open to building, like a pergola or something else that would be more appropriate. So as opposed to the aluminum structure here that we have in place now. So, and I was reviewing a lot of the staff notes and everything while you guys were talking about the other projects. And, well, as you said, staff recommendation is pretty much that we are allowed to proceed with everything with the potential exception of the carport. So, and really the question becomes, what would we allow? I was reading through the comments on whether porte cocheres, which obviously this is not a good example of something like that, and basically what would be allowed. But if we were to come up with a pergola structure that came up within these particular dimensions, do we think, or does the commission think that that would be something would be acceptable? I know it's hard to, that's a lot of supposition and it's not really within your purview, but that's basically the direction that we need to go.
no, but that's a good question, because that just brought to mind, the question of carports comes up from time to time, and I'm not sure, you're allowed to have accessory structures, you're allowed to have pergola and covered areas. I don't know if it's specifically the carport component, the car component of it that becomes an issue. The garage obviously isn't an issue, and they could do that. I'm almost wondering, and this is a question, kind of an open question to staff maybe, if it wasn't, if they built some kind of a pergola structure, that might be, that fit the guidelines in some way, that wasn't a carport, if that makes sense. Like if they want a space that they can work on bikes, work on whatever, even maybe sit out, have a table, almost like a patio type space.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, that's covered, but it's not a carport, it's not for a car, it's like a separate structure. You've got the garage, that's for the cars, and you've got like basically an outdoor patio space with it that's covered.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's nothing in the guidelines that specifically says carports are prohibited. The guidelines talk about accessory structures and where they are and are not appropriate, and they talk about materials and height and that sort of thing. So I think a covered outdoor space to the side of the garage in the backyard would be easily approvable. I think having an accessory structure of any sort in front of the garage where it's visible from the street is what presents more of a challenge. But perhaps if their goal is to have it as an outdoor space where they can spend time, work on a bike, that sort of thing, perhaps another location that's less visible from the street would be approvable.
Okay. Yeah,
What typically is the challenge for a carport is that you can see it from the street and it's blocking the historic garage. But we have approved that type of thing, a pergola or a covered kind of patio space next to a garage in the backyard many, many times.
And it might even be, I don't want to speak, I guess I'm speculating here, and I don't have the site plan. I need to find the site plan in this application, but
It's page 52-ish of your package, I think, if I counted correctly.
If you're in attachment, the attachment, it's page 26, or 28, sorry, of that PDF.
This is the single largest packet I've ever prepared for you guys.
because I'm almost wondering if it's a matter of where it goes or where they, there might be maybe the garage could move a little bit to the front, then they'd have room to put in the back or to the side. I wonder if that's something that, since the applicant isn't here or the owner isn't here, I wonder if maybe that's something you just have a discussion with, and is there a different location that could be?
Well,
That
the
would work for
locations are, a challenge in these small lots, obviously, and we actually, one of the points that was addressed was that there was a missing data point from the back of the garage to the rear utility line, and there was a staff consideration that expressed concern about whether we might have to have a revocable permit because of the utility easement in the back. That actually has been addressed in one of the supplemental pieces of information I sent in. And just for a point of the conversation, it's 12 feet is where, how much room we have from the back of the existing proposed garage and the assumed property line in the back. So we have roughly 6 to 7 feet we could scoot back. And the lots as they exist are only 50 feet wide. So moving east and west within the lot is problematic. And so in a lot of cases, it's preferable to move to the side because then you aren't working with, as we have in this case, where we're essentially building almost directly on the property line, but the side of the garage actually serves as the enclosure for the adjacent property to the east. So we might be able to move the garage a little bit to the west, and that really wouldn't change things in terms of visibility of a structure in front of the garage substantially, and I don't think we could scoot it over, I can guarantee that we aren't interested in moving over far enough to be able to have a structure concealed, because we've got an old growth tree back there that they won't want to lose. So we definitely couldn't do that.
So you're saying you couldn't move the garage back or put the structure behind it?
There's not enough room for a structure behind it, not really. And in the existing site plan and in this picture you have right now, you can just see a concrete foundation for what was an accessory structure behind the garage. But 12 feet doesn't really give you a whole lot to work with. I suppose we could pave it and put a structure back there, then put a construction joint or control joint at the utility easement point.
Yeah, so at issue is that additional accessory structure should just not be located in front of the garage. That's kind of the main point.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. So it seems like, nothing is before the commission right now to propose an alternate location. I think what might be the most efficient is to continue that item, and staff can work with the applicant and the applicant can work with the homeowner on some alternate locations for a structure that meets their needs and that meets the guidelines. And
Since
we
you are
have some
demolishing-
ability to administratively approve that type of thing as well. So it may be something that doesn't even have to come back before the commission, depending on what they want to pursue.
Right. Our homeowner is actually listening in on this online, and he just pointed out that moving west would actually interrupt their solar capacity. So, moving the
I don't see
garage
which way is
west.
west. Let's see if
Moving
I've got a site plan.
an accessory structure.
No, moving the garage itself.
And
yeah.
so I think that, well,
It doesn't
yeah.
matter, we're not gonna move the garage, so, so it's okay,
Yeah.
we can move past
I was
that.
gonna say, I mean, if you are demolishing the garage, I was just gonna mention, maybe there's an opportunity to move the garage further forward, then you have more room behind it, but I think it sounds like there's probably, I'm not sure, I'd like to hear from other commissioners maybe if they have any thoughts on.
It's actually a fairly interesting point that might be worth talking about, because the purpose, the way that we're constructing this garage really is only a single, for a single car. So we wouldn't actually have to worry about the accessibility of the west side. And one of the reasons that the carport actually serves a lot of functionality is obviously getting from the garage to the house in the event of inclement weather. Right now they've got a covered, pathway that, gets them from one spot to the other. But if we were to actually bring the garage forward a little bit, then their path of travel wouldn't have to be so much. We'd need to look at the insulation on, for the solar array, but that might be a fairly viable thing to scoot the
Because you can
footprint
move it
forward.
up, I mean, maybe even 12, I don't know, quite a bit maybe. If it's a one-car garage, they don't have to maneuver around or anything, and might open up some other areas for,
Is there a limitation of how far they could move the garage up, Katie?
Guidelines talk about approximating the location of the historic garage. We often allow some wiggle room with that. People often have to deal with things like utility easements and other complications in backyards that already exist. One thing we typically look at is how far forward or back adjacent garages are. If there's kind of a consistent pattern on the block, then we wouldn't want to disrupt that by bringing it too far forward. I don't know what the condition is here, but there's certainly room to move it up a little bit from where it is now.
Yeah, well, if we moved up, the depth of the carport's 18 feet, right? So, if we were to bring the footprint of the garage to the north by 6 feet, that would give us 18 feet behind the garage, from the garage to the property line. So,
yeah, I hate to delay this, but it sounds like the proposal in general looks good. I think the garage is fine. Really, staff is fine with everything, and I'm fine with everything. I understand the concern with the location of the covered structure. So I think it might make sense, maybe if you speak with your client and see if there's some other alternatives, and that might be something easily approvable if, come back with a location that meets the guidelines.
if we didn't change anything other than the location of the garage itself, the proposed garage, would that be something that would be approvable by staff as opposed to coming back before the commission? I mean, essentially, I'm asking, can we get approval on this so we don't have to go through the whole thing and then make an amendment like that with the staff?
We have some ability to do an administrative revision on placement of a garage. It would just depend on how much it's moving. And then, of course, it would be dependent on whether or not we could also administratively approve an accessory structure.
Right.
So if you moved it up, you would not be proposing likely the carport at the front of the garage?
Well, if I'm not misinterpreting what I've heard so far, and any structure in front of the garage is probably going to be a tough sell. I mean, that's that's what I'm hearing, is that these things aren't generally allowed. So please correct me if I'm wrong, because putting in a pergola up front that's lovely and provides covered access to the house would be an ideal solution. So, but like what I heard you say, Katie, basically I interpret it as, if you put something in front of the garage, it's going to be a no. So, I mean, I know that that's a very blunt way of putting it, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that's what I think I'm hearing. So
That would, staff would not recommend approval of an accessory structure of any sort in front of a garage where it's visible from the street, especially if we think there are some alternatives to place something like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's exactly the kind of thing I needed to know. So,
But
okay.
potentially, there's some room to shift the location of the garage. I guess I don't know how comfortable staff is with approving some shifts to the proposed garage as it is without a structure in front. But
Well, it sounds like if they came back with something that was far out of what the staff's comfortable, then it would just have to come back to us.
yeah,
So what would you need to, would you just need a continuance on just the carport structure?
Probably the
I mean, could
location of
we-
the
I
garage.
think it was asking if he made the adjustment of 6 feet, could we pass it all today and come back and ask for 6 feet if that's what his client recommends?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, I'm hoping, what I was thinking we would do, just to rephrase, is approve everything that the staff's already got. And item number 3 was decline the carport reconstruction with prejudice, and then, we look to amend the location by 6 feet. Or, whatever needs to be happening, so.
So, I don't know, 6 feet, you're only 18 feet back from the back wall of the house now. I think you're going to want to look carefully at what that does to maneuvering in and out of that space. I would be inclined to approve what's before us right now, as is, and then you work through it with the homeowner, what they want to do going forward with an accessory structure and what that does to the site plan, and kind of go from there, and rather than,
Right.
that makes sense to me. I mean, the demolition of the garage is a separate vote anyway, so we can go ahead and approve that. And
Right.
you could go ahead with that work if you wanted to, unless we have any opposition to that. And then we can just approve the garage as you've shown it. We could continue the carport item.
Yeah.
And then you could just come back with either a revised carport. If they did a pergola as an accessory structure in a approvable location, would that be administratively approvable in any way?
yep, we have
or-
guidelines that allow us to administratively approve things like pergolas in backyards where they are not visible from the street and they meet the, various guidelines for height and materials.
So then maybe if we approve this all, with the exception of the carport, we could still continue that just in case, that's something that you have some other ideas you want to come back with. It could be open, and if we come up with some other solution, you could close it out. And we could maybe add a condition or a finding or something to the motion that says that you could, if staff deems it approvable, you could move the garage up a little bit. If that allows you to relocate something to the back, that gives you a lot of flexibility to work on something that could be administratively approvable.
Well, or
And
rather than
stuff.
delegate that to staff, you all could include in your motion
Or
now
they
that
could move it
moving the
up.
garage
Yeah.
forward no more than 6 feet is allowed as part of your motion right now, if you all have no concerns about that change.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
as the only concern that, I would have had usually is what you just addressed, which is the accessibility to the garage, but since we're talking about it being a single car port and, it's basically straight in no matter where it is, whether it's 6 feet up, 10 feet up, directly adjacent to the house. Sorry, I did not mean to break it.
I don't think you did.
Very coincidental.
I'm not sure, you have 18 feet now, and the car doesn't really need to maneuver because it'll come straight in and straight back out.
Yeah,
So
it's not really, as far as the accessibility is, it's not an issue. And
Yeah.
so I definitely think that, we can work within what we've discussed right here. So I think that'd be great.
I mean, I'm inclined to say you could move the garage up to, 10 feet maybe from where it is now shown, so like 8 feet between the house and garage. But I don't know if my commissioners have any ideas on how much or how little.
We don't know where the other garages are in line with that.
Most of them are tending towards the back of the property. They vary between 5 feet, and sorry to interrupt but they vary between 5 feet off of the property line to, this is about as far as I've seen one actually, in terms of its, distance from the rear property line. They tend to hover in that 6 to 10 feet area
From the back?
from the back along this along this block anyway. I happen to live like 5 doors down, so.
I'm just gonna bring up one other fact that we haven't really, or thought that we haven't really considered, is if they relocate the pergola somewhere else on the site, they're likely gonna pave that as well. So then we start, I don't know what the, permeability of the site is or what coverage we have or whatever, but right now, the one unfortunate thing is having it where it is you get the commonality of being able to utilize that same paving for 2 purposes. We're gonna end up with multiple spots likely paved, possibly.
I wouldn't want it right outside my door, but that's not my house. But on the pergola, there's restrictions on permeable surfaces they can be on. So that would be one thing.
Yeah, I guess if you move the garage up, then you're eliminating that
A little
paving,
bit
and then
of-
you're
yeah.
adding it somewhere, so maybe it
Yeah.
wouldn't be,
Yeah, it's a net zero,
yeah.
in terms of, that, so. Yeah, it's a good point that
Yeah.
it definitely, it would not change, so.
So we do a motion, well, I'll make a motion.
Oh, and we need a motion separately for the demolition.
Is
And
there
then we
anybody
need
that
one for
cares
the
to speak?
the items, yeah. Yeah, any citizens that would like to be heard on this item before we make a motion? Nope, okay. All right, sorry, Patrick, you,
Okay, I make a motion to approve HPCA 22-166. You said we need a separate one? We just need,
We
We need
usually,
a s-
yeah, we
yeah.
usually do a separate motion for the garage, for the demolition.
for item number 1,
I'll second.
okay, we got a motion
That's just to
by-
confirm, that's with the findings in the staff report.
correct.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Gaines, second by Commissioner Milner. Oh, why come on, say each? All right, that item passed. So a motion for,
So we could do a motion for items 2, 3, 5, and 6 all together.
Okay, I make a motion for HPCA 22-166 for approval of items number 2, 3, 5, and 6 with the specific findings and in addition to allowing flexibility on the placement of the garage up to 6 feet forward.
I'll
Okay.
second.
we've got a motion by Commissioner Gaines, second by Commissioner Milner. Please vote in PrimeGov.
Do we need one more?
So
we
one
need
more
a
to continue
continuance?
the carport.
Okay. And when are we continuing this one to?
So the next meeting is January 4th or February 1st.
Okay.
And with, I will just say with not one but 2 holidays in between now and January, we're going to really hold applicants to that cutoff to get everything in by next week.
Gotcha.
Which
Which one
do
would
want?
you,
Oh, let's shoot for February.
So then we need to motion, I can do that. Motion, item HPCA-22-00166, item 4 for continuance. I've already forgotten the date.
to
the-
February 1st?
To the February 1st commission meeting.
Second
All right.
that.
Motion by Commissioner Milner, second by Commissioner Ford. Please vote in PrimeGov. Has everyone voted, or, yeah? Kind of slow today. The program.
It looks like it's, well, no, motion.
Yeah, we're all good here.
Desiree, we may need to do a verbal, or not.
Oh, pass. Okay, so you are continued on that item?
Can you confirm, Desiree, just that that was a unanimous or not?
It was
all in-
continued.
Continued, okay.
But it was unanimous that it was continued?
It was unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you guys. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right, moving on, we are on item 7, HPCA 22-00169.
This is located at 825 Northwest 39th Street, Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architects for Janet Wilms Briscoe for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct addition elective, and 2, relocate driveway gate with columns and east fence elective. This is a fairly small addition at the back corner of the house, and staff had no overall concerns with the proposed addition. There were a few building materials that we asked for some further clarification on, particularly the brick where it's butting up against the historic brick and mortar, just to be extra cautious where those two come into contact with each other. Staff's only concern with the proposed addition was just the roof form. For such a small addition, it results in what appears to be a fairly dramatic change to what's already a rather complicated roof, and staff thought there might be some alternative ways to address the roof on the addition without such a big change to the existing roof of the house. So we did recommend continuance largely because of that concern.
Hello, everyone. Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architects, 400 Northwest 23rd Street. Just as Katie mentioned, is a very minor and meager addition. The purpose of this, the homeowners absolutely adore this home. They've been there about 10 years. They plan to spend the rest of their days here. This addition would gain a bit of office space for the SIR and allow them to add an elevator should they ever need it in the future. And furthermore, a bit more closet space for the missus. So again, a very minor and meager addition. We've tucked it into the back corner of the house, a very minimally visible area of the house. That was quite intentional. We aligned the addition with the existing historic rear of the home, the back wall of the kitchen area. I've been reading through this staff report, and I find it interesting, some of the concerns. So our whole intent here was to do just what guideline 3.7.3 says, to preserve the original shape, line, pitch, and overhang of historic roofs, as well as the architectural features. We have just extended the steep pitch that exists on the primary facades of the home. So we see the steep 16-12 pitch on the east, south, and west sides of the house. It terminates at some point in the rear, even not, and then the historic rear reduces to a 7-12 pitch. I could certainly do this addition at a 7-12 pitch, but I think it would be detrimental to what the guidelines suggest as that they should relate to and complement the style of the main building, and that they should be compatible in design, proportion, size, and texture to the main house. In order to do a 7-12 pitch at the rear, you would see that overhang. We have an existing 6-12 pitch at the east side where we are doing this addition. So my proposal, what you see in front of you, is just to extend that 16-12 a little bit longer and terminate it at the extent of the rear addition. And there we will exchange to a 7-12 pitch. And in your roof plan, that's why at the corner you don't see a 45-degree angle off that corner. That's because we'll allow that 1612 to take precedence and cut those rafters off as they meet the 712 pitch, and we'll exchange back to a 712 in the rear. The purpose of this is just to allow that street view to maintain the same roof angle that you see currently. So it will be not reduced, but it will be continued. Something that is repeated in the guidelines many times. Historic details, here it is, 4.3.9. Historic details in coping, eaves, and parapet of the historic building may be continued at the point where the historic structure continues to the addition. That's all we've done, only up until that rear corner, so that the street view is maintained, so that no difference is experienced from the street view. Once we turn that corner, we go back to the 712. I find it interesting that the staff wants us to maintain a lower pitch, which is the reduced pitch, that is not to be visible. We can put a 712 pitch on this addition should this commission feel that that is more appropriate. I would tell you that is not more appropriate. I would tell you that what I've proposed is the more appropriate addressing of this continuance of the existing architecture. There is on the existing, I'd have you refer to the elevations, please, 3.3, which shows this continuance. So the existing east facade, you'll see the double windows on the upstairs and the double windows downstairs. This has a turned down, a very steep pitch that comes down. What we're doing is matching the fascia level at that higher back corner. So if you will, the northeast corner. We're matching that fascia and repeating some elements that we see on the main structure. This is our way of being compatible with the existing historic architecture, which is repeated throughout the guidelines, more so than the one guideline to distinguish. So, I mean, as you can see at the very back corner on A1 or A3.3, we end at a fascia height that is the same as the existing rear roof. And that roof line will be maintained, and that fascia line be maintained along the rear elevation, which you can see on the next page. So for us, this is our way of maintaining just that, just maintaining the continuation of the existing architectural elements. It's not an easy continuance. We will need to make a cricket to make sure that it drains appropriately. That's an easy framing condition, something we can easily fix, but I just mean it to be, this was very intentional for us to maintain this so that when you're looking at this house from the street, there's no sudden jump up of the roof suddenly from this lower fascia that you see on the existing east elevation, suddenly this jump up 2 feet. We are trying to maintain the existing fascia. We change once we make that corner. Another thing in the staff report, all proposed windows are relocated windows, relocated existing windows. The only proposed windows are the new transoms above the windows that are relocated on the addition. These transoms do not exist. The windows that are being relocated here previously had an arched transom above them, similar to what you see on the front elevation. We didn't feel like that was appropriate here because we have existing rectangular transoms next to them. So we'll just repeat that exact transom. There's no need for detailing. They're a very simple transom. It's a framed piece of glass. It's a rectangular piece of glass. We have provided window details for that. It's not a window. It's just a framed piece of glass above those windows that are relocated. So very simple and modest addition. The other items that in the staff report I will address are the clear and distinction among new to old. I feel like we've done that. The existing house has these pronounced buttresses on these corners of the east facade. You can see them here on a 3.3, but you can also see them in profile on, let me find it, sorry. Well, I think I provided them, but they are not here. Let me see if I can find them. 1 second. Pardon. Oh, yes. 3.1. Pardon my. Okay, so on 3.1, you see that second story line. If you were to draw that down, that's the line of brick on the second story. You have this undulating, stepped out buttress on both corners of the existing east sunroom. We're going to adjust or locate our addition just behind that, very intentionally behind that, not disrupting that buttress whatsoever. That buttress is repeated on all sides of the house, so it's in the front elevation, the bump out at the stoop, it is there. It is there on the west side. It is there on the east side. It will be undeniably obvious that this buttress represented the rear corner of the storecone, without question. We're not going to repeat this buttress at the rear corner because we want it to be clear that this is an addition. Another way that we are distinctively different is we are not repeating the cast stone detailing that's existing on that sunroom. So you can see in the pictures, you see that great cast stone that exists at the corners of all the windows. That detail, although beautiful, I won't repeat it for the sake of the guideline to distinguish and create a more simplified design. Specifically, I will pull out that guideline just so we are sure. Well, I'll find it in the meantime. I'd be happy to hear some feedback. I feel like this is a very modest, meager addition. I'm very surprised we weren't recommended for approval. I feel like the roof line is doing both. It's both meeting the rear existing roof line that is of low pitch. We are meeting the side, which is a steep existing pitch. It's not a new pitch. The staff report mentions a new 1612 pitch that is repeated throughout the existing historic condition, the existing historic house. So we're just picking that, we're just continuing that for a time along the east wall and then trying to be as modest as we can.
I appreciate it. Holly, do we have any comments from commissioners?
I actually don't have any issues with the addition. I think it's done to the best of the ability to coexist with the current house.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other? Yeah, I think, I mean, to me, it doesn't seem like that would be visible from the street either, I think. I think the buttresses do provide a pretty clear separation from, new and old. So I'm not sure I have any major questions. On the roof plan, I was a tiny bit confused. So one pitch you have, if I zoom in here now, 1612, and then you have 712 on the other one.
Yeah, so what they're gonna have to do is frame that 1612, the length of that wall, and then on the rear wall, frame 712 and just slice off those rafters at that ridge line. I mean, it's not, it's not a complicated deal for framers, but I think without a trained architectural eye, it may be difficult to understand in a roof plane.
Well, what
but-
I was, yeah, one, I guess, a little bit of confusion I had, you know, if you have two pitches, like a hip roof that are coming together, then you've got a 45-degree kind of angle. that
Not
comes
at a
off this.
45, yeah.
But yeah, but it seems like it almost is 45, but it could just be my eyes deceiving me.
No, it
Because obviously it
won't.
wouldn't be, it'd be like
It can't
right?
be, yeah, and that's exactly how they'll do it, is they'll frame up that 1612, and then as they approach the 712 up to a certain point, they'll just have to slice those off and find that ridge, and then we'll have to crick it back.
Well, and I've actually just done that on a house too, where one gable's a steeper pitch than the other two others, but.
That's right, but I would point out, this house has an incredible amount of roof complex
Yeah.
pitches and
Yeah, the front has almost like the Tudor, like the very steep.
and
then,
many different pitches and levels. I mean, just take a look at the west side, where they basically just had to create some outer soffit. You see it there the best. See, they maintained that steep pitch, but it didn't really work. So they just chopped it off. And I mean, this isn't an uncommon thing for framers to do. They were after that style, and they achieved it. This is a fantastic architectural home. The stonework on the facade is fantastic. The buttresses are large and exaggerated. It's a gorgeous home.
Yeah, no,
we
yeah, it's
are
a
trying to
really nice
not
house.
change anything. Just be respective to what's there.
For sure.
Can I make a
No.
motion?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Do we have, it- what,
I don't have
do we have
other
any comments from?
No comments from commissioners, yeah. Any comments from the public? Nope. Yes, please make a motion.
Real quick, just real quick, we do usually get specifications on brick, just so that we can confirm that it's going to match the existing brick. I know that's the intent, but that's something we include in the CA.
Yes, there
So you
will
have
be lots of
additional-
recovered brick along that L-shaped.
Yep, and that's just, I was just going to say for that, and then window details, and if we've got everything we need on the windows, that's fine, but just so that we can capture that as a condition of the approval, that,
Yeah, I
brick.
provided a detail on the French door as well, so I'm not sure whether to make it in the staff report, but yes, anything the staff needs, you guys know, I will provide.
So just to be clear, staff would need either documentation or some note that you're reusing the brick that's in that L, or some kind of specification on new brick.
specifications for brick and any new windows or door materials. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to motion approval of HPCA-22-00169, items 1 and 2, the specific findings in the staff report. And then do you want me to add additional info to be provided to staff?
With the condition, yeah, that additional documentation and materials be submitted to staff. If that works.
Did we get that? Do I need to repeat it?
As
The additional documentation
stated by staff.
stated by staff.
A second.
All right, we got a motion by Commissioner Milner. We got a second by Commissioner Gaines. Please vote in PrimeGov. All right, you are approved. All right, so we are going to, I guess we could do let's get back to items 4, HPSA 22-00156.
Okay, so items 4 and 5 are virtually the same application, just mirror images of each other. So we'll start with 4 and talk through that, and then virtually everything that's said about that is going to be applicable to item 5. This is located at 122 Northwest 19th Street, Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks Creative Home Design LLC for Tone Trong for certificate of approval appropriateness to 1 construct shared garage elective. The commission saw this property several years ago when a historic shared garage was demolished. The applicants were approved to construct a new shared garage and to pour a concrete pad for a shared driveway and concrete pad for the garage. The garage itself was never constructed, but the driveway and pad were poured. Apparently the pad is larger than what was approved by the commission. And they've now proposed to construct a shared garage back on that pad. Staff's main concerns were that the size of the garage has increased from what was previously there and what was previously approved, and that the roof form has changed to a side gable instead of a shed roof, which increases the height and the visibility of the structure as seen from the street. I think one other item of note was that the proposed garage doors are a material that is typically not approved when visible from the street. But I think that pretty well summarizes the issues with the proposals, and if the commission has any questions.
Yeah, I remember this one, I think, from a few years back. Could the applicant state their name and address, please?
Fallon Brooks, 733 Northwest 22nd, representing the applicant.
All right, appreciate it. So I'll just start off real quick. So could you quantify or summarize real quick what the difference is from the original proposed to the current proposal?
Yeah, so that's a perfect picture right there. So the slab was constructed, and it does not, it looks like it's not quite what was proposed. It's a little bit larger. And we're just trying to work with what's existing so that we don't have to tear out all of this concrete, and there's a lot of it. And you can see by the little curb there that the openings that are left in the slab are for the 16 wide door. I know that staff recommended 2 doors. I don't really think that we can accommodate that because there's a 16-foot opening. We would need, probably another foot in between in order to get 2 8-foot doors. It's not really ideal in the existing setup. As far as the roof goes, the original garage had a very low pitch roof, and we had a hard time accommodating that for, roofing materials and things. It just kind of made it a little more cost prohibitive. So we were trying to keep it a little more affordable to construct within the slab that's existing, but also, just overall, just cost effectiveness.
Just kind of glancing at this, and maybe staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like each half of the garage is 21 feet by 22, 10 inches, something like that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty close, I think, to the
Yeah.
guidelines for a garage, right? So, and then looking at the site plan, you've documented that paving, which looks huge, of course, although some of that would be covered by the garage. As a matter of fact, like half that is probably slab for the garage, correct?
Yeah, well, the front of the garage is where that curb is visible in that image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at the site plan, since those 2 garages share that one drive, you would need to have it flared out. So I'm not really sure. I don't know if you would be able to reduce it much and still have a usable garage. I don't know if anyone else has any different opinions on that, but because it seems like, if it's 21 feet deep, that's really 1 car depth plus a little bit extra, which you would need anyway. So if I'm looking at the site plan, it looks like the depth of that paving where it curves is maybe even a little bit less than the garage depth. So I'm just imagining pulling in and pulling out, you'd need to have a little bit of room there to maneuver. But
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
I think the paving in front of the garage, it seems like, I don't know if you'd be able to get away with much less and still be able to maneuver two
Yeah.
cars and, you
Yeah.
know, to the outside spots. So, I don't know, anyone else have any comments or thoughts on this one? And historically, it was a two-car, it was two garage, shared garage configuration, right?
Historically, it was one long structure with two single garage doors, one on each end, and then it had sort of storage space in the middle. And then this is what got built. It's not quite what was approved originally. You know, it just is what, I guess, my understanding was that there was, somebody bought both of these houses, flipped both of them, tore down the garage without a permit, and, you know, then had to get a CA to construct a new garage. And then instead of constructing a new garage, they just left the slab and chose not to finish it. So we're just kind of operating within what we were given.
Yeah, I think I remember this one from a few years
Yeah.
back. To me, I mean, the garages themselves, you know, if I just assume one garage per each house, you know, I think that seems like it pretty much fits the guidelines. And the paving, I don't know. I'm trying to see what the staff recommendation was here.
So we don't typically do this, but we did provide a recommendation for approval and an alternate recommendation for continuance in the event that you all wanted to see this more thoroughly reworked. And you know, we've had a couple of these today where the work has already occurred, and I just want to remind the commission that you are not bound by work that has already been done, particularly work that was done inconsistently with an approval. So not to say that we want to unnecessarily inconvenience an applicant, you know, under any circumstances, but if you feel that work is proposed that is inappropriate, you're not bound by previously existing conditions to approve it anyway.
So there are comments from the neighborhood. I think generally it seems like they're okay with most things other than maybe a single door, not a double door. Is that correct? Mr. Rice?
Okay,
Any
so
comment on that?
Again, we just worked with the openings that were created in the slab. The placement isn't ideal either. They're a little further to the sides. We just worked within the parameters of the existing slab.
So there's the two options that staff is kind of recommending where there's an approval with conditions, and the conditions are that the garage be constructed with a proposed footprint or less, but with a flat roof that approximates the original structure, or that it should not exceed 10.5 feet above the slab. And that there's some additional fenestration in the south wall. Trying to understand this one of the overhead doors. Oh, metal doors, okay. Do you have any, I mean, is that something that you would be open to agreeing to, or with the conditions as staff notes for that approvable option, or?
So looking at the staff recommendations,
It looks like you could stick with the proposed footprint, just change the roof. Looks like maybe add some
and adding windows on the
fenestration.
rear.
Yeah, and then if the doors are metal, they would have to be some alternate material, I believe. Is that correct? There's something about the metal doors, or?
So metal is allowed when garages are modest in style, located at the back of the lot, and minimally visible from the street or public right-of-way. So it wasn't entirely clear to us whether we would consider these to be minimally visible from the public right-of-way. That's why there were some comments in the staff report about some additional documentation of what that line of sight would be to the garage doors as proposed. It is toward the rear of the lot, certainly. but it's also in the middle of the driveway, so you're going to be looking straight up the driveway at the garage.
If we back up one slide, you can actually see what it looks like from the right of way and what's visible. Is there another one that goes from the street, or is that, yeah, you can kind of see the curb
There.
There you
still
go, yeah.
sitting there, so you'd probably see about half of each garage door.
So I think our interpretation of that, or the intent of that, has always kind of been the garage that's tucked back kind of behind the house, where you really have to be peering up the driveway from the street to see it, that was an appropriate location for a metal door. That when it's right in the middle of a shared drive like this, it's going to be a more prominent, more visible feature. There are alternate materials for garage doors. It doesn't have to be a wood door, but I would say the guidelines aren't supportive of a metal door.
Does anyone else on the commission have any thoughts on the door arrangement, double door, single door, and or materiality of the door?
I would just, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm in agreement that I think it should be not metal unless it were a little bit further to the side, where you couldn't quite see them down the drive.
Would the commission be amenable to a metal door if we could get a smooth metal door instead of because I know what we've done in the past on metal doors, because they're textured, you can actually flip some of the panels on depends on the product, but you can have a smooth side that faces out. It's available. It's a cost prohibitive thing. I think also doing 4 small doors instead of 2 larger doors, to me, draws more attention to it from the right of way. If you're talking about doing 2 8-foot doors on each side, that is 4 doors across this thing, which to me seems excessive. I feel like having 2 doors where you're only seeing sort of half of them from the right of way makes a little more sense. And again, we're working within what we were given.
I don't think I have a problem with the double doors, because I mean, enough of that'll be off to the side that it won't quite look like it's a giant double door, but I think just maybe the material.
And what about did you answer about the flat roof?
The flat roof, that is a question for my client. Would you be willing? Yeah, you can come address the commission, sure.
Could you state your name and address, please?
Yeah, Don Trong, 122 Northwest 19th.
Right, thank you. Yeah, do you have any opinions on doing a flat sloping roof instead of a...
Yeah, so we wanted to do, I understand that the original from the previous owners, they had like a lean-to style roof. But I think for us, these houses, this one's 102 years old. There's not a lot of storage in this house, so what we're looking for is storage above the rafters in the garage. That, and with the lean-to, we're a bit concerned about the water flow issue, so I think a gable roof would be more conducive to controlling the flow of water during rains and such events.
You know, personally to me, I'm not sure I have a strong opinion on the roof, because I think whether it's a gable roof or a shed roof, like if we had a blank slate and it was like you had no idea what the garage was, I think that would be easily approvable. I wouldn't have an issue with that. So I'm not sure that I really feel that we have to go back to, you know, that kind of a shed roof for the new one, you know, personally.
The neighborhood doesn't seem to make a strong opinion on that either, other than it does recognize that it was originally a flat roof. However, historic garages nearby in the neighborhood have cabled roofs, so. I don't know if we want to let Mr. Ice come up and speak on behalf of.
Anyone from the neighborhood want to speak?
Randy Ice, 119 Northwest 19th, right across the street, actually. The original garage was a flat roof. It was a 2-car garage with servants' quarters to the side. Okay, I've lived across the street for 40 years. And the original doors slid this way, like shed doors used to do years ago. They was always owned by both parties, two houses. The houses were never owned together. But the two got together and tore it down, even though during the demolition, they came out and told them to stop, and they, I guess, declined. And so they tore it down, and I understand, they were fined for that, and they both sold their houses and moved. And I think this was part of the reason, okay? This garage turned into a huge problem for both of them. They did pour a foundation. I know it doesn't match what was approved. I think going back in and ripping it up and changing it would be pretty cost prohibitive. The neighborhood's position is it is very difficult to get two owners to build a shared garage and agree on things, okay? I mean, if one of these people moves, chances of the next person coming in and wanting to finish this project would be difficult, okay? We're trying to put something back as much as possible as to what was there, and you gotta get two property owners to agree to this. You don't see very many shared drive or shared garage applications coming before you for that reason. Everybody has a different idea. And when this gentleman first mentioned this to me, I said, get with your neighbor. See if you can put up one garage together. Then you don't get into setbacks. You don't get into any kind of problems like that. That's what was there before. You can use the existing pad, okay? It's much more cost effective. And so they were able to work something out. And so in that sense, the neighborhood is very supportive of this. There's little details. I mean, the neighborhood would prefer single doors just because that's the most common in the neighborhood, more historic lights. The roof is not that big a deal to us, but the biggest deal is to try and get these two homeowners to get this project finished, because what happens when one sells? Okay, if it's not already done, then we're left with a half-built garage, okay? And you can see the challenges that can create.
I always appreciate comments from the neighborhood, and you are right, this really is a unique circumstance because you are trying to get two neighbors to agree, and it seems right now they do. I think I would lean towards motion approval of the shared garage as it's presented. However, I need to go back to the garage doors. What were we saying about the garage doors, though?
I think, yeah, I know I don't have a big issue with having a single door. We've made that, distinction a bunch. And actually, it's kind of unique in this case because you're looking at it and you've got it split in half, and you're going to see one half of each garage. It's almost going to look like two separate
singles.
You know. Yeah. So I don't have a big issue with that.
What about the material?
The material,
I liked the proposal of like a smoother side.
Yeah, I like that idea. I understand that if you're next to a lot of houses that all have like true wood, that's one thing. I do appreciate the durability of metal. It's just, it's going to be less maintenance, presumably, and cost effective for them to build. And I do appreciate Mr. Ice's comments on, it is probably rare to get two neighbors to agree to build anything together like this. And so that's maybe a nice way to end this story where they, demolish this garage kind of on their own and without approval. And anyway, so it's kind of nice to see something get built back and have the neighbors working together. So I'm pretty supportive of the proposal with the single doors and kind of as it's shown with the roof, gabled roof.
So a condition could be that they submit a door with a smooth finish to staff for inclusion in the certificate of appropriateness, and we can work through whether that's a metal product or some other material if you all are comfortable with that.
So can I do this? Can I move approval of HPCA-22-00156?
Do we have anybody else that wanted to
sorry.
speak? Sorry, I just wanted to make sure, because we still have, nope, I think we're, sorry, go ahead.
Where was I? Motion approval of HPCA-22-00156. Item 1. Do I need to mention specific findings? Because we've altered some of these because we're okay with it not being a flat roof.
You can include the specific findings, which is just calling out information and just not include the conditions
Okay.
that were listed.
And maybe,
With the specific findings in the staff recommendation, but we are adding a condition that the garage door, the materials of the garage doors be submitted to staff
Yes.
for approval.
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Thanks.
All right, so we got a motion by Commissioner Milner, a second by Commissioner Poor. Please vote in PrimeGov. And then I guess do we just make the identical motion for HPCA 2200163?
Yep.
But you should go ahead and call out the case number.
Okay.
And then let him do that.
Okay.
So you want me
So
to?
that item passed?
Oh,
Oh, yes.
sorry.
So that motion passed. So then HPCA 22-00163 at 126 Northwest 19th Street, Heritage Hills East, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks, CHD, for Joseph Ost for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct shared garage elective. And again, this is the perfect mirror image of what you all just approved. So,
I guess we have the applicant here, and I don't know if I need to officially call for a comment from the public, but sounds like there is none. So we have a motion?
Okay, right. You'd hope I can remember everything I just said. Motion approval of HPCA-22-00163 with specific findings mentioned in the staff report, as well as the condition that the garage door materials be submitted to staff for approval.
All right, motion by Commissioner Milner.
I'll
Do
second
we
that
have a
motion.
Second by Commissioner Poor. Please vote in PrimeGov. And drum roll. You are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to give a really big thanks to staff on this one. They worked really hard, and it was I believe that I was told that some of the staff had a little bit of PTSD about that one because they'd seen it before. So I really appreciated the help on that one. It was a little bit difficult, so thank you.
All right, appreciate it, Fallon. And we are on to item 8, last item on our individual items for consideration, HPCA 22-00171.
this is located at 419 Northwest 25th Street, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks for David DeWitt for certificate of appropriateness to, and I'm not going to read off all 22 items, but it is to make various renovations to an existing historic dwelling and to a non-historic accessory duplex at the rear of the property. Staff recommend approval of numerous items, including replacing non-historic windows and non-historic doors. We recommended approval with conditions on replacement of some of the windows on the accessory building, addressing the window configuration that could potentially be more consistent with the character of the property in the district. We recommended continuance on some of the items that involved relocating or reconfiguring window and door openings in locations where the guidelines typically don't support those types of changes. Might start off with if the commission has any particular questions. I will also note that there is the very next item on your agenda is a request to rezone this property to an SPUD that would allow the existing duplex to be reconfigured as 4 one-bedroom units instead of 2 two-bedroom units, and that is to some extent driving some of the proposed changes to that building and to things like fencing. So.
This is the one you had a
Yes.
handout for.
So yes, also to clarify, I realized today that at the end of the staff report, some numbering got off on the items, so I fixed it and I printed off new copies for everyone up here. I should have probably printed you one so you don't get lost. So if everyone wants to look at their paper copy of the staff report as we go along, rather than the copy in PrimeGov where the numbering's not accurate.
All right, so do we have any comments from commissioners on this item?
I will point out before we get started that the SPUD that we're supposed to go before Planning Commission with tomorrow, after talking with Janice Powers, who's our Ward 2 Commissioner, I think we're probably going to table the SPUD for a minute. There was just way too much pushback from both historic preservation staff and also city staff for the planning department for the SPUD. But what we would like to do is, obviously there's holding costs and things involved. We'd really like to get moving forward on this. So really the renovations to the exteriors of both structures, we would like to be able to move forward on. So.
That sounds good. And just to be clear, there's no demolition, it's just renovation to each structure, is that correct?
Yes, and I will point out, so some of the things that were just, I guess before we get started, some of the things that were pointed out in the staff report were inconsistency of design with the main house and that sort of thing. And I think it's pretty obvious given the existing structure here. You know, I tried to convince my client to save these very historic plastic shutters, but they're not. This is more of a colonial sort of look. The main house is a little more craftsman. I mean, both are really more, not really consistent with any one style. They're more kind of vernacular in their presentation. And then the accessory dwelling unit is also not, you know, it's not a dominant feature on the block. You're not driving down the block. You would have to, I think, stop and back up and go, what was that? So I don't know that the architectural style of it being, you know, I don't think that it necessarily has to be identical to the house. I think it's pretty clear that it's an accessory dwelling unit that was built sometime later. It's not original to the property. I think the main house was built in 1905. And then all the evidence that's in your packet shows that this accessory dwelling unit was probably built in the late 70s or early 80s. So I'd just like to point those things out before we discuss.
Okay, I appreciate that. Does anyone have any specific comments?
And given the length of this, if you all wanted to just kind of start with the staff recommendation and go batch by batch, we can kind of talk through those and let the applicant respond. And you know, there are several here that are just straight up recommended approval or approval with a pretty minimal condition, so we could get some of those out of the way and then get to anything that was more of a concern.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So like item 1 is approval of non-historic windows, replace. There's a condition that the applicant provide confirmation that the door opening will be retained at the same size to staff prior to release. So do you agree with that condition?
I really can't hear you. It's like you're in a fishbowl. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So on item 1, for example, replace non-historic windows in primary dwelling. Oh.
I didn't do that.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. So item 1 is replacing the non-historic windows in the primary dwelling and replacing the non-historic front door with the condition that the applicant provide confirmation the door opening will be retained. Is that all? Do you agree with that condition?
On the front?
So, yes, just that you're not altering the size of the door opening for the front door.
No.
Okay.
So I think we can check item 1 off. I think that's okay, unless I have any comments from commissioners on that item.
And if it's more effective for you all to motion on these as we go, so we don't have to go back and remember what we said and
That's
did
not
or
a
did
bad
not agree
idea,
to.
and-
I'm good with that.
Yeah, because it's not a,
Could I get one of these that's updated so I can keep up?
Yeah, let me.
we have an extra one up here probably.
Is there an extra one?
Oh, yeah, there is.
Thank you.
That was Mary Jo's. Yeah.
Oh, was it?
Yep.
So I guess for each item, if we're gonna have a motion on it as we go, we should probably ask if there's any comment from the public. So do we have any comments from either commissioners or the public on items 1?
1 and 2.
1 and 2, I apologize.
Okay, so 1 through 3 are all
I mean, all the way down.
approve
to-
items. Number 4 is continue. 5 is approved, 6 continue, 7 continue, 8 approve, 9 continue, 10 continue. I can't figure out what 11 is.
So that's why the numbering is wrong. 11 was replace all the windows on the accessory building. And then I realized I needed to split that out side by side, the front, the sides, the rear.
Okay.
And I never went back and deleted 11. So 11 is just
It's not real?
it's like the 13th floor of a
Okay.
home. No, it doesn't exist. We will correct that in the system later, but you don't need to take action on that one.
And
Well,
then
yeah, it might make sense just to
12
do a
through
batch
22
approval
are
for
all
those.
approval. So I
Yeah.
guess, have you read through the conditions based on the ones that are approved to be approved or recommended to be approved by staff? The findings and conditions?
I'm sorry, say that again, Kathy.
On all the ones that they have made recommendation to approve from staff, are you okay with all the specific findings and conditions listed alongside those?
I don't know.
Would it be helpful if I read through those?
Probably.
Yeah, especially like
Yeah.
on
They're okay. Oh, he's okay with it. That's my client.
Okay.
So the one that has a condition that you may or may not agree to relates to the comment you made when we first started on the changes to the windows at the accessory building. The condition was that the applicant provide revised elevations with window configurations compatible with the primary dwelling as directed by the commission prior to release of the CA. Staff's thought with that was even if you were building a brand new building, we would look to that for proportions and massing that was compatible with the house in the district. And what we typically see throughout the district is like, a 1/1 hung window, pairs of windows, triple sets of windows. And that's not really what we're seeing proposed here.
Yeah.
If you weren't changing the existing windows, staff wouldn't have taken issue with what's there, but if you're changing the openings anyway, it made sense to go in a more district compatible direction, not less. So that may be one we want to set aside and go back through kind of the easy wins.
Yeah, so I would say let's get the easy ones out of the way and we can go back and discuss that because I do have some counterpoints to that.
So which number does that specifically affect?
So that is staff recommendation number 7, so it's items 12 through 19.
It affects all of those items under
Yep.
number 7? Okay. 12 through 19. Okay.
So to go through these kind of first easy ones, it's,
So are we thinking other than,
So
I'm just trying to see where Commissioner Port, are you thinking we just, the ones they've read and they agree to the conditions, just do one motion for all of those approvals and then tackle the,
And then, yeah.
because there are a few in here
Because the
that are-
conditions seem pretty minor for the other ones. It's like provide, fully dimensioned site plan or, provide a confirmation of an opening width or something, so.
So yeah, I was thinking basically 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 20, 21, and 22. With the current conditions and
Yeah.
specific findings
As referenced in the statute.
as recommended in the staff report, right? That's my motion.
And I
Okay.
will second that motion.
hold on, let me double check where 7 is. 7 is recommended for continuance.
Right. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, maybe if I said 7. So let me clarify.
This is
My motion for HPCA 22000171 for items 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 20, 21, and 22 with the current specific findings and conditions listed in the staff report.
Second.
Here we go.
And we did have no comments from the public on this one. Just checking. No? Okay. So we got a motion by Commissioner Port, a second by Commissioner Gaines, I believe. So you, okay. Please vote on PrimeGov. Okay, that has passed, so we have knocked a lot of these out. So we are now on to the windows.
Do we want to jump to 12 through 19, where she would like to make rebuttals to the proposed conditions?
Yeah, that sounds good. Do you have any comments on
Which numbers?
12 through, basically 12 through 19, the location of windows? Yeah, item 7
Item 7 of approvals,
on the staff report.
with the condition that applicants provide revised elevations with window configurations compatible with primary dwelling.
Hang on, sorry, there's a lot of items, it's confusing.
Yeah, it is.
So you said item
Items 12, infill doors and install new doors at accessory building. 13, replace windows at front elevation. Building 14, remove shutters at front elevation. 15, alter canopy at front entrance. 16, reuse front door and new opening at rear of accessory building. 17, remove bay windows and replace all windows. Rear of accessory building. 18, install new window openings at rear elevation. 19, install new window openings at east and west elevation. So all of those are recommended for approval, except for the condition that staff put in was that you provide revised elevations with window configurations compatible with the primary dwelling.
compatible, okay. So as far as compatibility goes, there are several examples within the neighborhood of new construction, which this is being treated as new construction, is my understanding. So we have several structures that, and I'm not allowed to bring new materials, so I couldn't show you I had a whole bunch of them listed. But there's several locations within the neighborhood, a block away, 2 blocks away, all on the same street, that are showing, that are single pane, not single pane, but single, no divided lights, just a solid piece of glass window. And these don't really deviate from that. They do slide, but it basically from the street is going to look like 2 of those windows side by side with a divider in between. So we don't feel like, I mean, one, it's an improvement upon the existing condition, vast improvement. The existing windows are the milled aluminum that were put in probably the 70s or 80s, whenever this was built. And so, you know, I'll point out again that both of these structures were probably prime candidates for demolition. And so what we're proposing is, 1, cost-effective, and 2, it's much better than what's there, and it doesn't deviate from some of the newer construction that's in the neighborhood. Without materials to show you, I can't really argue that point further. David might be able to.
I think the main concern I have probably as far as the new window configuration is the no windows on the north side of the front property. I kind of feel like, you know, I don't think if it was new construction, I think I'd have a comment on that regardless if it's existing or new, and I have a hard time approving a wall with no windows, really. So
That's actually in a different batch. Sorry.
Oh, is that a whole
That's in a
different-
different batch of items, yes, sorry.
I'm just scrolling through all the elevations here,
Yeah.
just looking at it.
I tried to make them easy by putting existing and new side by side.
No, I appreciate that. That actually helps a lot. So, yeah, I think for me personally, I'm just going to comment on it since I've got the elevations in front of me, and we can kind of maybe sort out what items those are, kind of figure out, because I think it's all kind of related to exterior openings for a lot of the questions. So, yeah, I think that's my one concern on that house. I think I would really like to see some kind of openings on that north side. And then I don't have any huge opinions on that back one. I wonder, you're kind of doing some different windows, the sliding windows or something on that. I mean, is there a reason why you don't just put 2, like 3050, single, double hung, whatever,
In the rear of the main house, is that what we're talking about?
I'm sorry, I've jumped to the back one, the ADU. So those new windows you're putting in the front that are kind of like the sliding.
Yeah, so
ones,
those
I
are the
mean-
same size as what's existing. They're just going back in the same openings. We're not proposing.
Oh, it's the same openings?
The
and-
same opening,
okay.
yeah. They're going right back in.
The-
So,
The windows on the first floor on the front elevation existing look significantly larger
Oh, sorry,
than
they-
what's shown.
there
on
is a
the-
difference, sorry. We did make them, because there's parking back there, we did raise the sill of those so that headlights don't shine into that window. That was the change, sorry.
Yeah, it looks like it's a really low sill originally. It looks like a really low sill originally. like
Yeah,
maybe like a
it
foot or
is.
something. Yeah.
It does not meet code. We could not put them back the way that they are without tempering all of it, so.
So are they in that configuration, like the sliding for egress, because you made them smaller, the opening or something? or
They
is it-
still meet code for egress, yes.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know, is there,
I don't know that they would be required to because it's not a sleeping quarters, but
And I will say, staff wasn't terribly concerned about using a material that is more affordable, that is, not a wood window. Given that it's an accessory building, it has metal windows now, it's not a historic building. But as I said, just like if you were coming in with a brand-new construction project that was fairly minimal and, a little bit of a colonial vibe to it, we would say, well, those windows look really out of character with that building and with the just the property with the district at large. So it just seemed to staff, if you're changing the window openings anyway, perhaps going with something that's a more typical window configuration, at least on the front. I don't know that I have concerns about the rear, but this building is significantly wider than the primary structure, so even though it's at the rear, you can see it, and it's taller, so you can see it beyond the house. So that seemed like something that would be doable without being too much of a change to what you're intending to do with the property.
May I petition to speak? Is my microphone on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Hello,
Could you
David.
please- Yeah.
Yes, David D. Witt, reside at 904 Northwest 40th Street, and I am the owner and client of this application. Regarding the windows on the rear structure, I would I petition that the side-by-side clear lights be permitted for a couple reasons. Well, one, if there was an idea that should try to match the house, I think that may be an inappropriate, motivation. The house and the duplex are a different architecture, and I think there's verbiage in the guidelines about trying to not make new construction identical to old. So the house being the northern folk, and then the duplex being some sort of side-gabled colonial vernacular, that trying to make it look like the house may be misguided. Next, on the windows being, clear ones, I guess, is that it's kind of common in the area. There's several houses within hundreds of feet. 325 Northwest 25th is a new construction with clear side-by-sides. 2601 North Hudson also has clear on its back. It's a red brick triplex. A new construction colonial, that's 614 Northwest 25th, built in the last 8 years, is a colonial with clear casement windows. So it's typically colonials had, gridded divided lights, and it has clear. And then I think a recently improved project at 2510 North Chartel has this exact same window pattern with a side-by-side clear. And the other property on the address, the church, has 1/1 sashes, and that's dissimilar. And so there's some new construction that is like this, and we think it's not going to be disruptive to the historic nature of the neighborhood. I mean, if it's new construction, then that's kind of distinct of that building. And as far as its impact on the kind of pedestrian experience of the historic streetscape, the duplex is at the back of the lot, and the lot dives down. So although it's 2 stories, you probably lose 5 or 6 feet of elevation from the curb. So it's not really, really dominant. And then the whole structure is kind of a forward sloped roof. So it's kind of like a demure position on the property. And overall, I think the change from the side-by-side mill-grade aluminum that weren't just 1/1. They had that kind of dummy divider in there. That it's a great kind of aesthetic improvement. So those are my remarks on the windows. I don't think it would hurt anybody. I think it looks sharp, and it'd actually be rather similar to a lot of themes in the neighborhood, very local, within hundreds of feet in the new construction vein.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think, personally, I don't have a huge issue with that, and you're really just putting new windows in place of, what was there, in the same opening width-wise. So, if they're approvable windows, I don't know if I have a huge issue with that. I think regarding windows and openings, really my main comment is just the north side of that one building. That's probably the one thing that I really have comments on, I think. But do you have any, response to no windows on the north side or?
Of the main structure.
Of the main structure?
Okay,
Yes,
yes.
sorry.
Mostly that's for because we have two separate dwelling units, two separate unrelated residences, really. It's more for a noise barrier, because that's a bedroom, and it is facing parking, and you can't control when your neighbors come and go. So that was really the consideration, was part of making the whole property more livable, and more desirable to rent. I know that it doesn't necessarily have the best aesthetic quality, but it's not visible from anywhere except for those rear units. And it's still an improvement upon what's existing. The other thing is that back wall as it exists was originally a porch anyway, and there was only one opening in it. And that was the door. And then that porch was sort of built on. There's a lot of evidence for that. And so that was sort of the reasoning for it. It's consistent with what was existing. We are removing a couple of windows, but those are not original to 1905 either, because that porch, again, was added on at some point, which was evidenced by the Sanborn maps, sorry.
So the proposed plan for the main house, on that north side facing the drive, looks like you've got a bathroom, some sinks facing the north, and then a closet on that master bedroom, and then like a dining / study or something.
Like a dining / study, yeah. Again, trying to keep those sleeping quarters away from the drive and parking.
Does anyone have any comments on that? Any commissioners?
I will say that while we're discussing that, that does also play into why we are changing the size of the window that's on the east side that faces the driveway. That staff recommended that we continue that item, but that's part of relocating sort of the layout of the house and putting a kitchen there. In order to do that, we need to raise the sill of that window up to countertop height. And that's all part of that consideration of relocating sleeping quarters away from the active driveway and parking.
Yeah, and I'm definitely sympathetic to, I do a lot of small development too, so there's a lot of things you have to do kind of to make sure that, things are livable and kind of comfortable for everyone in somewhat tighter quarters than normal, but I don't know. I personally, I would like to maintain, I think it'd be important to maintain at least one window facing the north. Looks like there's one you're filling in the dining and study. Perhaps that could just be maintained, and that would give some.
Yeah.
So that would be my recommendation, but I don't know if anyone else has any comments on that.
There's a lot in this.
Well, I was going to
So,
suggest, do we want to finish with the accessory building? Because we kind of were going through
Yeah,
the
we did.
discussion
Sorry.
on those windows, and they're kind of one
Yeah,
batch of
so-
items that staff had recommended that they make some changes to the design of the windows. The applicant has made some points about why they don't feel that that's necessary. It sounded like some on the commission were comfortable with the windows as proposed. Do we have other comments?
Yeah,
on-
thank you. Are you talking about?
I'm
can you
talking
come-
about staff
okay.
recommendation 7, items
12
12
through 19.
19, which are all on the accessory building.
Okay, because it just had that condition that the applicant provide revised elevations with window configurations. Is that if we as a commission had issues and wanted to see something
Correct. That was if
changed?
you felt that the window configuration as proposed was not appropriate and you wanted to see a more traditional window pattern. But if you all are comfortable with what's proposed, you could approve that and just not include the condition.
Do any of us have any issues? Can I make a motion?
Yep.
A motion, oh, goodness. Okay, my motion approval of item HPCA-22-00171, items 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, I just want to make sure I get them all, 18, 19, with specific findings as noted in the staff report. And we are removing the condition,
Yes.
correct?
Second
Okay.
thought.
Okay, got a motion by Commissioner Milner and a second by Commissioner Poore. Please vote in PrimeGov.
Okay, so then now,
So
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. I guess that'd be
we
item
go.
5 maybe is the
Well,
front.
yeah, and do 5 and 6, numbers 5 and 6, on the agenda 5 and 6, both of these deal with the windows.
Oh,
Sorry, do
so
we need to
we're
clarify
bouncing
the-
back and forth between referring to staff recommendation number 5 versus
okay.
item 5.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm on
Okay.
staff recommendation 5 and 6. Both of these deal with windows on the primary dwelling, correct?
yes.
Just want to, okay.
So, to just tackle number
5.
5, that is windows that are on the sides of the house. It's a window opening on the east elevation that would be altered, window opening on the west elevation that would be relocated, a window on the west elevation that would be filled in and replaced with a door. So all of these were forward of the rear 30% of the dwelling. We have a guideline that talks about allowing for new windows and doors in the rear 30%. So that's typically where we have allowed some flexibility for changes to things like, hey, we're putting a bathroom here, we're putting a kitchen here, we need to change the shape and size of the window. So when those kinds of changes to windows are forward of that point, we typically don't recommend approval. The one I think that was the most concerning to staff is the forwardmost window on the west elevation, simply because that's going to be the most prominent, the most visible window from the street.
It moves
this-
less than a foot.
But it's,
something like that.
is it changing in, are you using, well, the historic window's gone. It's just, it's the original window opening, it's the original proportions and configuration of one of the oldest structures in Jefferson Park. So to start moving openings around,
Sure.
you know, with every little change, with every little reconfiguration of an opening, we're removing that original fabric and that original character and condition. So where it's not absolutely necessary, you know, if we can, the whole idea when you buy a property in a historic district is you're going to keep what you have and you got to work with what you got. And yes, sometimes accommodations have to be made for modernizing a building and making upgrades, but where at all possible, if we can keep historic openings intact and in their existing location, that's what staff's going to recommend.
I will say, at least on that window, it is, you're talking about the one on the west side, on the south end of the building, the
Yes,
southernmost
it's
window.
the bedroom 2 window.
So
West elevation front?
It's elevation A8, if you want to look at the map.
thank you. Let me pull that up so you know.
Yeah, it's basically, it looks like the same window size, just shifted over a foot to the, is that south, I guess? No, north?
It just
North,
shifts to
yeah.
the north. Yeah.
Are you relocating it because of where the bathroom?
Yeah,
And how it would, otherwise it would come right in between the two rooms, wouldn't it? Per the
Yeah,
drawing, is
and-
that how I'm
and-
reading this right?
originally I had proposed to leave the bedroom as it was and put the bathroom back there behind it. But again, it was that concern of noise on the street, but trying to keep the bedrooms more isolated away from street noise and that sort of thing. So we didn't feel like moving it 1 foot was too big of an ask, so.
Are you replacing the siding on that house, or what are you doing with the siding? and
So
trim and
we
all that?
are going to use as much of the original siding that is underneath that we can. We will have to obviously infill and replace. And I gave a profile, there's a reveal in there that shows it matches the existing. So you won't be able to tell.
And other than on the original house here, am I reading it right, that other than left as is there really only one point of entry and exit? Is that the front door?
There are two. There is one in the rear currently.
Currently, okay, I see. I'm looking at the new.
You're moving that back door from the back to the side.
Yeah, to the side, because currently, I don't know if you can tell by the site plan, but there's, obviously this is not a usable yard. It just goes right out to parking. And then on the west side of the house, we're pretty far away from the property line, so there's actually a really sizable area for a small side yard. And that was why we'd proposed that the door kind of go out that way, so that you could have access to that side yard without having to go all the way around. Just, again, sort of making it a little more usable.
So it,
Okay,
you
that
know,
makes
it looks like, I mean, every window on the west side of the house is moving and/or changing. Shape, size, location. One changes from a window to a door. Most of the windows on the east side of the house are, I think everything but the front window is, well, no, I take that back. There's one window on the east side that's changing, the others are just being replaced, and then one's being
they're
added.
just
So
being replaced.
it's, you know, we often see someone that's doing a kitchen remodel at the rear of the house, and they have to raise the sill because they're putting in the kitchen cabinets. Just the cumulative effect of changing that many windows on side elevations at the front portion of the house is something that, you know, the guidelines don't take lightly, and that staff doesn't take lightly. The more we make these little tweaks and changes over time, then suddenly there's not much left of the original structure, so.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess I balance that a little bit with, you know, I'm not sure, you know, this property does need some help for sure. And, you know, we've got someone who's willing to put a lot of work into it, and I don't know, I struggle sometimes if it's a small change like that. I'm not sure that's changing the historic character of the property, but it is making it, I don't know, maybe more developable and usable, which ensures that someone is, you know, renovating it to ensure that the building will stay there. So I don't know. I'm not sure. It is a small change. I understand it's a small change. I wonder if it could be, it's such a small change, could something be reconfigured on the inside to where you don't have to move it over a foot, you know?
Are we talking again about the southernmost window on the west side?
I'm talking about this, yeah, southernmost window on the west. Where the bathroom is, or the bathroom
Where the
is
bathroom is in the front? We're moving that backward.
Yes, I don't have any accommodating ideas for the most southern west window. I was going to add a remark about, I believe it's item 4, so on elevation A7. Is that what it is?
A7.
Where, so I was looking at A7 and A8 together, so the central window. So on A7, the central window is a tall window, like 2650. And then if you flip to A8, now the short window is in that spot. So we're just moving the kitchen from one side to the other. So in terms of historic character of the window pattern, 120 years ago it was on the west, and now it's just going to be the east. But as for the southernmost window, that is to abut a 5-foot deep bathroom for a bathtub, so that's the rationale for that distance. But I don't have an accommodating idea at the point, only just that it's being moved, I think, 1 foot to accommodate the bathroom. If there was an issue say in elevation A8, if there was an issue with the, say, the count of windows in the elevation as a whole, then we can make a change because it goes from a window, 2 windows to a window and a door. Although the door is a half light, so it would kind of be the same amount of open space. If, I don't know if it'd be worse, but we could put 2 windows in that front bedroom, like 2 2050s. That may not be constructive, but if the count of windows was an issue, then that could be an improvement idea we had.
Where would you move the door? You have to have a second door, right?
Well, the door would stay there, so if you had, I think A-4 is the floor plan.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
typo, sorry. They went out of order.
I've got it
I
up
think
on
a
the
page got
screen.
copied.
Yeah, they're
So in this right here, if you can see, and this, I'll make the case for this. So the reason that we have moved that window back a foot or whatever, it's about a foot, was to accommodate the bathroom. And the reason that we laid it out this way is you can see where the dash lines are, that's the demo plan underneath. So that original bedroom is only like 10 feet wide. It's hardly usable. And by putting this bathroom at the front, one, it keeps us from street noise. So if you've got a child or something in that bedroom, you're shielding it. But also, it allows us to widen that bedroom out past the opening of the door in the front room. So that makes it to where we have a more usable space. And we also kind of have a little nook for the front door to kind of be out of the way and not entering right into the middle of a living space.
Commissioner Reedman Phillip, this window, we could move it, now to see the floor plan, A4, we could move it as south as possible and abut that wall. So if that's true to the elevation, then we really could, looks like it could come 10 inches or so to the south and even keep window casing. So that could get it really, really, really close to the existing opening.
Yeah, I guess it's, to me, almost from like a construction or architectural standpoint, almost seems like, you know, you're changing the headers and the framing and the trim. Like, I would almost just, personally, I would just find a way to leave it there just so you don't have to do the work of putting a new header and framer.
I will point out too that this house, the way it was constructed, is a lot of the framing is inadequate. All of the foundation framing was inadequate, the wall framing, the windows, there's no king studs on any of the windows. A lot of those have to be beefed up and fixed anyway. So it was one of those things where it was like, we're already in here, we might as well. It's just the existing condition of the house is, honestly, if I brought this house before you guys without any of these changes for just to demolish it, I really honestly believe you guys would pass it. So that was kind of the thought behind, if we're having to rearrange some things, and it's not too difficult because they weren't framed properly to begin with, then it might be worth it to go ahead and do it, to go ahead and relocate it, so.
I don't have a problem with the fact that the window moved, but you think about what the construction inside the combination was. I don't have a problem with that. You see they're kind of bouncing around the windows and doors. And I think we need to focus on one thing and do it because we're going to be here until 10 o'clock.
That sounds good. So does anyone have any other comments on the doors and windows for this front house? Because I know we mentioned the windows on the on the south side where there are no windows. Does anyone else have any comments on that? Yeah, the one that faces the back of the property. Your guys, so it's not a hill that I'm going to die on if my fellow commissioners don't have any issues with that. I don't have an issue with that. And is everyone okay then with that window moving a foot? Okay.
So there, on that one, the way we have them grouped is altering the window on the east elevation, that's for the kitchen, relocating the southernmost window, infilling the second window there to replace with a door on the west side. So that's one batch, and then the other batch is the rear elevation, basically removing all the features on the rear elevation.
When you say second batch, you're talking
So-
about still under 5?
So the rear elevation is staff recommendation number 6. So we were on 5. So I will just say that every time staff works with property owners, we hammer home, don't start moving features around. You got to work with what you got from the interior. And I understand you have to reframe and all of that, but I just want to impress upon the commission how hard we work as staff to impress upon people that just because you bought a house and you want to remodel it and you want to put in a pretty bathroom doesn't mean you get to rip all the windows out and put them in new locations. So that said, if you all feel like you know, these changes are appropriate and are necessary. I mean, you all obviously have the discretion to make the motion that you think is appropriate. But this is a battle that we fight a lot, and we fight really hard when people want to remodel. So I just want to have really good findings about why it's okay in this instance to move all the windows and doors on a 1905 house.
Well, you're also saying like, I appreciate what you're saying. Are you also saying like, what are unique circumstances that are
I think that
forcing
would
us
be,
to
I
an
think that would be
approval?
very important if we recommend, if we motion to approve this, these items 4, 6, and 7 to identify unique circumstances that justify relocating and infilling the historic window and door openings.
Because if you ask it like that to me, I have none. I mean, I understand that the house is in disrepair, but I appreciate what you're saying. If you're having to find those unique circumstances, I don't have it because you want to move the bedroom back and put the bathroom up. There's a lot of homes that the bedrooms are up front. That's how they were designed. That's a store. I get it. We are
We
here
do
to
allow for,
preserve.
like, if you put a kitchen in, we're like, okay, you got this window here, we'll let you make it shorter or
Well,
something.
usually that's though in
but-
the rear, it's in the rear 30%
Yeah.
of the side elevation.
Yeah.
So that's,
And I
we
think in that
kind of make that
example
distinction.
that you had made, it's the window staying in the same cutout. They might just be lifting the window
No,
up.
I think that's
so.
just as important if you're changing the size of a window. I would
Right.
rather see one move over a foot than shrink a foot.
I think the distinction here is that Katie's making is that it would be behind that line, behind that 30% or
Yeah,
the front.
Maybe.
Right, yeah. The guidelines distinguish between the rear 30% of the side elevation, because that's going to be less visible, it's potentially screened by a fence, as opposed to the front 70% that is going to be more visible from the street.
Is the door in the 30% mark?
It looks like it's past the 30%.
I think everything's forward.
Are you talking about the side door?
Let me
The new
look
side
at that.
door?
The one that the window's being replaced and the door's being.
Looks like it's
You said the
over
rear 30.
halfway back, maybe, but
This is the first time this application's come up, though, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, these two items could be continued, and we could say, you need to work harder to relocate less and not move doors and try to get closer to an interior layout that matches the original historic exterior door and window placement.
So it may be fair to say that there's some additional flexibility in what they do with the windows past that 30% mark, but forward of that, we need to be a little more, have a little more discretion. Is that fair to say? Well, it sounds like there's a lot of discussion on this one. Short of being able to prove what they've shown today, you know, if the commission is not comfortable with that, I think we'd have to continue this and see if they can work with what they have a little bit more. I don't know.
I mean, do we need a motion? Do we need to try a motion here of continuance?
So, I mean, we may be at the point where someone just make the motion and we see if there's a second and we see if there's a vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
I just want to clarify, so this boils down to two windows, the southernmost window on the west side and the middle window on the east side, correct?
Can I ask why you're also removing the existing window in the dining study? If that seems like that could be a functional window.
Oh, in the rear?
Mhm.
No, we agreed to leave that in
Okay.
place. That was discussed earlier.
Okay.
So we are moving a window. So on the west elevation, we're relocating one window, we are removing a second window and installing a door in its place. The two at the back, are changing, those are behind the rear 30%, so staff didn't take issue with those two, but it's the two windows and then the new door on the west, and then,
And it's a complete elimination of
right,
all
eliminate.
windows on the back of the house, right?
And then
Except
it's-
for that one in the dining
Except for
study
the one
that
in the
they've
dining
agreed
slash
to keep.
study that we've agreed to keep.
And then the change to the kitchen window on the east.
So I would say the two things that I would be the most concerned about would be the door on the west elevation. I think that I kind of feel like we need that in order to be able to make that usable yard space accessible. The kitchen window also, I feel like having to rework around that is, I tried a ton of different layouts and that just makes the most sense. As far as the southernmost window on the west elevation, I think that we probably have some options. I'm willing to table that one.
So to me, the door is past that 30%, and I think it will make, it's a meaningful improvement. I think it would be nice to have that side yard to turn into a nice yard. I get that that'd be nice to have easily accessible, so.
And it's, by the way, I did the math, it's 38%.
It's, okay,
Is where
so
it's
it's in the,
located, so-
it's forward of the 30%,
Yeah,
The side
the
door.
side door. Mhm.
yeah,
From the rear, not from the front.
yeah.
Why is it 30%?
I don't know. I mean, I
These
think,
numbers seem
I
very
think when,
arbitrary.
I think there must have been some calculation of, okay, if it's that far back and assuming you've got other houses to either side, you've got fencing, it's not gonna be visible, it's not gonna be noticeable.
I guess that door to me, it would be behind fences. It looks like it's past, halfway past the side of that.
Yeah.
I just,
It's-
I don't
it's in the
think,
rear
yeah.
And I would say, staff, I personally don't have a concern about the installation of a door. The concern is that in order to do that, you have to remove a historic window that is, I think, too close to that corner to be able to fit in a door. Is that accurate? You couldn't have that window stay and still install that door?
We actually could because it looks into a laundry. And we now, if we're unable to do the southernmost window, then we'll probably rearrange most of that. We will leave that hallway for that door because we need access. But the rest of that, if we have to rework it, then we could possibly find a way to keep that window. I'm willing to revisit it.
It seems like with some small tweaks, we're pretty much at an approval. If they keep that front window in the original configuration, you know, I think that door location's okay. You're gonna keep that one window on the north, in that dining study room. I think that really just leaves that one, I'm okay with adding the window in that back area on the east elevation, and then we have that one window in the middle on the east that you're shortening. I don't really have an issue with that one either. That looks like it's back, you know, close to 50% back from the front, but. So really, I feel pretty comfortable with some conditions that we could get to a place where I think you're respecting the historical integrity of the building and maintaining almost all the openings, and making it functional still. And
So
if for
if-
some reason you can't, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, so if they are leaving, let me flip to, if item 4, if item 6, relocate southernmost window is not happening, like, we could just continue that. And if they aren't going to relocate it, then we don't need to do anything with it at all. If ultimately they decide that they do really have to relocate it, we could revisit that.
Yeah, we can come back for that.
Okay, same thing with item 7. Well, we have item 7, infill window and replace with door on west, so those are paired together.
So you
That
said
could
you
be
could maybe
approved with the
leave-
condition that
yeah.
the window be retained,
Mhm.
and you could always come back if that's not doable. The window door combo.
The window that's next to the door.
Next to that laundry.
Showing,
Yeah.
can we pull that back up so that I just want to be clear on what
Yeah,
we're
let me-
talking about on the
Let
plan
me
sheet.
share my,
It's labeled A4, but it's after A8.
I know, they're all mixed up.
I think somebody copied that actually right there.
Yeah.
So you can see where, so the shaded walls are where we're putting in new walls, and you can see in there where the washer and dryer are. Is that the window you're talking about?
Yep.
Okay, yeah,
it
I think
stay?
we could, I mean, we can come back and discuss it later if we need to remove it, but for now, we can table the discussion, and I can see if I can find a way to keep it.
so that could be an approval of item 7 with the condition that the window be retained.
And if
So-
not, you'll come back.
And if not, you would come back. if
Okay,
you can't
that's
keep
what
the
I,
window.
just, I want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
make sure that that's clear, okay.
Yeah.
Is that also an approval of item 4?
It sounded like everyone was comfortable with item 4, which is the kitchen window, even though that's forward of that 30% mark. But it's farther back.
Okay,
Almost if you can like replicate that kitchen window to the one on the west facade,
It is the same size
Okay.
as what's existing.
Then I
I'll
feel,
point out again that none of the windows in the house are original. They're
Yeah.
all aluminum. They were put in the 80s or late 70s, early 80s, probably when that accessory dwelling unit was built. So,
then I'm fine with.
yeah, but it's the same
Sure.
size.
So that's item 4.
It sounds like we got a plan for all of those. Do we have any comments from the public? And do we have a motion?
Have we gotten to 9 and 10, or do we need to just
No,
get through
I think
these?
we just
Okay.
approve
Okay.
item 5 in the staff report, or, whatever.
So we
4,
just,
6, and 7.
Yes, 4, 6, and 7 with the conditions. If anyone wants to make that motion, and then we
I
can
think
move.
well,
six-
6 is a
six we're continuing.
continuance. Yeah, so it's a,
Right,
So it'll have to be separate,
yeah.
right?
so this would be a motion to approve HPCA-22-171, item 4 and 7.
That 7 remains.
With condition that the window remains.
With the condition that the window remains on item 7. Do I still need to mention with specific findings in the staff report?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Milner and a second by Commissioner Poore. All in favor, or please vote in PrimeGov.
Okay, so then to complete that one, then we need a continuance on item 6.
Correct.
Okay, that item passed.
9 and
so-
10.
Or, and,
Yes, item 6.
well, are we still discussing 9 and 10, or are those being lumped into
Let's finish
continuance?
We'll do that
up
as a separate item.
Okay,
10U6.
But I guess
So
we need
we-
to know whether you want to do February or January on that one.
Oh,
you went to January or February?
What's the due date on that? You said the
It would be-
13th?
It would be Tuesday for
No.
the fourth meeting.
I'm homesick with COVID. Like, I can't even believe I'm here right now, so.
We need to go to
And
February?
I hate to do that to my client. I'm really sorry. But yeah, it's
February
probably gonna
1st.
have to be February. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to
So
motion,
February.
so is it February, I have to ask this
February
again,
1st.
February 1st?
Yeah.
I'm going to motion, continue HPCA-22-171, item 6, to the February 1st commission meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, please vote in PrimeGov.
Oh, we're almost getting there.
Item 6, or item, I guess, 9 and 10 under
9 and 10.
staff report, item 6. I wonder if well, I'll make a comment after the fact.
Is it 9, 10, and 11? or
It's just 9 and
It's
10.
just 9 and 10,
And then
okay.
11 we're going to basically record as withdrawn because it's,
Okay.
Okay, so 9 is remove
12
window
through
box
19
on
was
south
encompassed
elevation.
under what was originally 11.
And item 10, infill all openings on rear elevation. But that one's changing because they've agreed to leave one, right?
Yeah, all we have on that one, I think, is a condition that they keep the one window in
Yes.
the study / dining, whatever.
So
that room is.
so then I can motion approval on this with the condition, right, let me just do this.
yes.
I'm going to
Yeah.
motion approval of HPCA-22-171 items 9 and 10 with the condition, what window is it? Do I need to specify what window it is?
I would
Yeah,
say it is
it's,
The dining
the
study window.
easternmost window on the north elevation.
Okay, help me with that one more time.
The easternmost window on the north elevation.
With the easternmost window on the north elevation is remaining.
Yes.
I'll second that.
All right.
And
we
I'm
got a
sorry, I
motion.
did not mention specific findings in the staff report. Did I need to do that?
We'll just capture those.
Yeah.
That was your mention.
All right.
Oh, man. You're right. All right, please vote in PrimeGov. What does that leave?
Okay, now do I need to make a comment about,
Do we need to withdraw 11?
No, we'll do that as just an administrative withdrawal, yes, that it's
So for the record,
not an item.
So is that everything for this item?
I think so.
I believe that is all items.
Okay.
So you are approved/continued.
Congratulations.
Okay, I'm definitely going to email you tomorrow to clarify all of this.
So on the SPUD, well, I guess, sorry to.
Yeah,
jump
so
ahead.
we are on to, yeah, we're on to the item
Other business?
7A. Yeah, SPUD 1466.
Yeah, I would like to at least discuss it while we're here. I think we are going to continue the planning commission hearing tomorrow, but I wanted to at least get some feedback from you guys on it since we're here. We met with the neighborhood, and I think the biggest concern with the people in the neighborhood was that the parking needs to stay as it is, that we can't really add or subtract. And I understand that there is parking in the front setback, but there's currently no parking allowed on the north side of the street, which means in front of this property, there's no parking allowed. And then also, if you look at the aerial, there are, I think 5 or 6 properties on that same street that have front parking. So we're not an abnormal condition. The properties on either side of this property have front parking within the setback. And that seems to have been the biggest concern, not only from city staff, but also from our planning commissioner for Ward 2. I don't really see a way that we can avoid it without sacrificing any other kind of usable outdoor space on the lot.
You said you had some pushback from staff, I guess, on this. What were their comments on the
So the
proposed
concerns
plan?
were that we're not maintaining the historic lot pattern within the neighborhood. We're proposing some 5-foot panhandles, and so if you read the master design statement for this SPUD, it actually states that the minimum lot width within the development is 5 feet. That's kind of misleading because that 5 foot is just accommodating for utilities for the front building to be able to reach the rear, and also for the utilities that are in the street for the back building to be able to reach as well. So there's the site plan within the exhibits that I gave you guys there. It shows like parcel 1 and parcel 2 and how those lot lines were laid out. We're dividing up a property with invisible lines. And the idea behind that was, there are a couple of reasons. One is for insurance purposes. It's also for, in the long run, if somebody wanted to purchase the front house as a single-family home and it not be part of the rental dwellings that are in the rear. A lot of people might be looking for a single-family home, and something like this that's on a smaller lot and has that accessory dwelling unit behind it, they don't want to deal with that. They may be able to get this for a better price. It might be more, it makes it more available, I think, to a wider buyer pool. And we like owner-occupied properties in these historic districts. So that was sort of the reasoning behind it, just to make it a more attractive and also for insurance purposes and holding costs and those sort of things.
I was going to ask what the
Also makes it
potential
available to
was.
more loan products, so.
I was going to ask what the intention was between, for the SPUD, because, it's all constructed already, so, I think in some ways it's kind of grandfathered in. I know that, actually, we did a SPUD on a property, and everything was constructed already and was non-conforming, because HP had come along after the fact. It was a commercial property in a residential district. There's no accommodations for commercial. So we had to do a SPUD essentially to make it conforming.
That's
Is
part of
that
it.
playing into this at all, or?
So not really. So the other part of it is, so in the current base zoning district, you're allowed more than, there's 3 units on the property right now, and we're proposing 5. That's the other part of the SPUD, is turning those rear dwelling units. Currently, they are 2-story townhouse, it's a duplex, and each of those is a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath. And what we're proposing is 4 studio units. And those 4 studio units are, we're not increasing the number of bedrooms, essentially. So we kind of looked at it like that. If you had a tenant in there, it's probably a single person, whereas if it stays a two-bedroom, it's probably 2 or more people, and they probably have 2 cars. So the parking required doesn't change. You know, it's still basically 1 parking space per bedroom space. We're not adding any additional bathrooms, so we're not overloading any of the existing utilities like sewer or anything like that. So it's a minor change, and it just also opens up, I think, it opens up the neighborhood to be more affordable, I think, for a larger pool of renters. You know, this is a walkable area. We're real close to Paseo. It just, to us, the single studio units just made more sense. And so that was also part of that SPUD application, because even though it's allowed in the base zoning district, it deviates in that the lot isn't wide enough and there's some setback requirements and things. And so the SPUD was largely to accommodate those things, to accommodate, you know, where it sits on the property and everything, and how much frontage and all of that is required.
I guess for me personally, I don't have an issue with the density increases or the panhandle lots, because I mean, I've done a lot of those for infill development. That's just, you know, the city requires, so you have street frontage, and even if the owner were to keep it as one, sometimes it makes financing easier. There's all kinds of reasons why, you know, it's really just a, I don't really have an issue with that. I know sometimes on the language on the SPUD, I've said like lot width is, let's say if it was a 50-foot lot and you have a 5-foot width for sewer or water or something, you know, it's like
So-
45-foot width, but allow for a 5-foot utility.
Okay, so
I don't
change the
know,
language.
Just a thought, maybe city staff would like that better, but I think the other issue that staff brought up was the parking in front, and I don't know, I mean, I almost wonder, since you're not gonna take this to planning commission tomorrow, and we don't really need to do a recommendation on this, I'd kind of like to see what changes you make in general to the SPUD application, and then, because it'd come back to us again, I think.
Yeah.
When
Is
it's
that
going
something that we
to-
can workshop? Is that? I know the December workshop's canceled, but.
We generally do not do workshops for active cases. We have been discouraged from using workshops to review.
Okay.
Yeah, because it is a public meeting, but people don't follow those agendas and show up. I'm trying to pull up the calendar. So if you, Planning Commission only meets once this month, right?
Yeah, I'm
So
not
if-
sure. I didn't look at the calendar, so I don't know when it would get moved to, so.
I mean, it wouldn't be any sooner than January 5th, which would be the day after our January 4th meeting. So we could bring this back and see what you've worked out between now and
I'd
that
be willing to
meeting.
do that, because we still have to
Sorry to
work
make
it
you
out with
sit
our
through another meeting, but
You're fine.
Well, there are a couple neighborhood letters in support of, I think their argument seems like is kind of, that is a pattern of development on the street, and they don't want to lose parking because when there's parking on
Yes,
on
and we,
street, so.
so the plan as of today, because I spoke with our planning commissioner, is the plan is to set up a neighborhood meeting with the planning commissioner, so that she can hear those concerns and also sort of discuss it with the neighborhood. So I think that if we were to come back in January to discuss the SPUD, then by then we will probably have alleviated some of those issues.
So have you or your client met with the neighborhood association?
We
Or
did, yes.
You did meet with
We
them?
did. Klaus was actually there and he had to leave.
Okay.
I had to leave, yeah.
So yeah, we met with
Okay.
them just last week.
So are we tabling this item for now?
I was gonna say, so it
Yes.
sounds like we might just
Sorry,
not
wanna
take
get-
action on it, yeah.
Yeah, and since, I'll defer to Rita, do we need to take any sort of formal action on that since this is just a recommendation, or do we just?
I think you should
Kind
go
of
ahead
all
and
con- okay.
continue.
We just continue
Okay.
the item to
Okay.
January.
So do you want me to motion?
To continue item,
we go.
SPUD 01466 to the January, is it 4th meeting?
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Porras, second by Commissioner Paul. Please vote in PEMGov.
I did. Yeah, thanks.
All right, and that item Passed. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so item B, 7B, BOA 15170.
This is located at 1708 North Francis Avenue, Mesta Park, HP Urban Conservation District, Ward 6. Request for recommendation from HP Commission regarding a special exception to allow for home sharing. This is a home sharing request in an HP district, so the requirements are that it be the primary residence of the home sharing host and that they be on site at time of rental. The applicant has indicated it is their primary residence, and they've indicated that they will be on site. I believe this is one that the home share is within a accessory building, a garage. So staff did recommend approval of this application.
Okay, any comments from commissioners or the public? Do we have a motion on this one?
I will make a motion to, are we just approving it?
We
or
are
making a recommendation?
making a recommendation.
To make a recommendation of BOA 15170.
Okay.
Is that it?
What is the recommendation?
Of approval? Sorry.
We do have in there a condition that approval be granted with confirmation that the owner will be on site at time of rental. That's just kind of our
With that
standard.
condition.
And I'll
So
second.
motion by Commissioner Poor, second by Commissioner Milner. Please vote in PrimeGov. That motion. Pass. Okay. On to 7C, BOA 15177.
This is located at 612 Northwest 25th Street, Paseo, Historic Landmark, Neighborhood Conservation District, Ward 2. This is, again, a request for recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission regarding special exception to allow for home sharing. Because this one is in a historic landmark overlay district, the requirements about it being owner occupied and then being on site at the time of rental do not apply. They just have to get a special exception because it's not their primary residence. So that means it has to come through us. And seeing nothing proposed related to the home share that would have an impact on the historic property, we recommended a recommendation of approval for this item as well.
All right, thank you. Do we have any comments from commissioners or the public? Staff is recommending approval. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to recommend approval of BOA
We're glad you waited on that.
to
I'm
the
sorry.
Board of Adjustment.
I've studied and I've seen a lot of these in the past, and there's sometimes some contingencies, so, just wanted to be here.
It's
Yeah.
late and we're tired.
Held
Well, I
out to the
appreciate you
very-
sticking it out with us because it is.
Bravo. Okay, I'll
All right,
second.
moved by Commissioner Poor,
Did we get a second? Who was
I'll
that?
second.
Yes.
second by Commissioner Milner. Drum roll.
I'm gonna take this opportunity, my mom's been watching as well.
Hi, Mom. Funny.
Yep, appreciate it. Thanks for sticking it out with
Hilarious.
us. All right, so that concludes other business, communications, and reports.
Nothing particular to report. Feel free to contact staff anytime you have questions about AAs.
Okay, that leaves us with,
Do we need to do something to the consent item that was,
yeah. we
So
just need to
it's
con-
automatically continued because there's no
good.
quorum for that item. So,
Sorry.
sorry.
I know. Womp womp.
Okay, so administrative approvals,
We can go that way.
anything from administrative closings?
Nope,
City-
nothing on administrative closings, council, board of adjustment, or planning commission.
You have nothing, all right. So next meeting date, next regularly scheduled meeting date is Wednesday, January 4th at 2 PM at the Municipal Building, City Council Chamber. New applications for this meeting were received November 1st, 2022. New information on projects continued from today's meeting to the upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4 PM Tuesday, December 13th, 2022. The next regularly scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, December 14th. I think we moved, that's,
That has been canceled, and we'll coordinate to reschedule that.
okay. Items from commissioners?
Yep.
Items from commissioners? Citizens? We are adjourned.